In the name of the African ancestors who began the march of humankind in the womb of Mother Africa, we ask these ancestors to be with us, to strengthen us, and give us a vision for the future. In the name of the African ancestors who began the march of humankind in the womb of Mother Africa and marched down the Nile, laying the foundations for human civilization and culture, we ask these Africans to be with us, to strengthen us, and give us a vision for the future. In the name of these African ancestors who built their pyramids and their temples to their God concepts, to their principles, and to their moral values, who left us a legacy of architectural and monumental building unparalleled in the history of the world, we ask these ancestors who built the pyramids, who built the temples, to be with us, to strengthen us, and give us a vision for the future. We ask these African ancestors who took this African culture and extended it throughout Africa, building the stone cities of Zimbabwe, building the empires of the Sudan, Ghana, Mali, and Songhai, building the Swahili city-states along the east coast of Africa, and in Christian Africa asking King Lalibela and giving him the courage to build the 12 churches of Lalibela from the ground down, monuments to the world. We ask these Africans who spread this culture to the Dogo and to the Akan and to the Yoruba and to the Bankango and to the Zulu. We ask these Africans to be with us, to strengthen us, and give us a vision for the future. In the name of the Africans who opened up Africa, opened up the Nile Valley to other cultures and other peoples, and they came in and nurtured themselves on the African greatness. First coming in early with the ancient Hebrews, and they synthesized this culture and produced Judaism. Later coming in were the Christians, and they synthesized this culture and produced Christianity. Coming in were also the Greeks, who took the African culture, synthesized it, and produced Greek civilization. And then later, the Prophet Muhammad, and with the Arabs coming into the Nile Valley, they synthesized the culture and produced Islam. We ask these African ancestors who, as part of their legacy, laid the foundations for Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and Greek civilization, to be with us, to strengthen us, and give us a vision for the future. We ask those African ancestors pulled out of Africa, taken to the hells of North America, South America, the Caribbean, maintaining the spirit of African humanity in their hearts and in their minds, and who left us this enormous legacy of struggle. We ask those Africans who resisted enslavement in the villages of Africa, who resisted enslavement in the shores of Africa, who resisted enslavement in those forts and dungeons, who resisted enslavement in the holds of those ships, who resisted enslavement when they arrived on these shores in the New World. We ask these Africans who ran into the highlands of northeast Brazil and established for 100 years the first free republic in the Americas, the Republic of Palmares, and their last great leader, Zumbi, whose spirit and sacrifice. We ask these Africans who replicated the Brazilian experience and went into the highlands of Jamaica and became the maroon-free communities. We ask these Africans who went into the backwoods of the Guyanas and Suriname and created free republic of the Suramaka and the Ajuka. We ask these Africans who went into the backwoods of Georgia and the swamps of Florida and moved with the Seminole Indians and resisted oppression. We ask these Africans who left us a legacy of struggle and resistance, the likes of which no one in the world has, to be with us, to strengthen us, and give us a vision for the future. We ask these Africans who created and laid for us a foundation of struggle and resistance that was passed on generation after generation, that was passed on to Harriet Tubman, who fought her way out of enslavement and became a symbol of freedom for all of us. Similarly, Frederick Douglass and hundreds of thousands of others fought their way out of enslavement. We ask those Africans who went with Boukman Dessalines to create the greatest revolutionary experience in the history of the world, the Haitian Revolution, leaving us a legacy, the likes of which no one else has had. We ask these Africans to be with us, to strengthen us, and give us a vision for the future.
Before Amon, the greatest one, who though hidden from us is a source of all life, prosperity, and health. Let us unite in peace. Let us heed the call of our ancestors. Let the African spirit unite us as we attempt to continue the struggle, confident that we will conquer. Our ancestors ancestors, blacker than 1,000 midnights, African ancestors, it is to you that we, your children, give respect and honor. O ancestors, we call upon you and welcome you in this place. African ancestors, let your presence fill this place. O ancestors who have purposely excluded from the history books by others so that the world would not know of your greatness. Our African ancestors, who gave civilization to the world. Our African ancestors who gave the arts to the world. Our African ancestors who gave music to the world. Our African ancestors who gave the sciences to the world. Our African ancestors who gave mathematics to the world. Our African ancestors who gave medicine to the world. Our African ancestors who gave literature to the world. Our African ancestors who gave philosophy to the world. Our African ancestors who gave God consciousness to the world. O ancestors, we thank you for devoting your life to make a future for us, your children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. Now, stand with us, strengthen us, guide us, teach us, and protect us from the snare of our enemies. Rise up, O African ancestors, and let our enemies be scattered, and give us the wisdom and the boldness to deal with our oppressors and those who would hinder the liberation and empowerment of our people. Rise up, O African ancestors, and live in us, and we will not fail to honor you. We will not fail to respect you. We will not fail to hear you, and we will not betray you. Ashe, Ashe, Ashe.
Speak truth to the people. To identify the enemy is to free the mind. Free the mind of the people. Speak to the mind of the people. Speak truth.
Our encouragement, our advice, admonition, if you want to call it that, comes from Mwalimu Marcus Messiah Garvey, who says, let no religious scruples, no political machination divide us, but let us hold together under all climes and in every country, making among ourselves a racial empire upon which the sun shall never set. Your first allegiance shall be to your God, then to your family, race, and country.
Hide nothing from the masses of the people. Tell no lies. Expose lies whenever they are told. Mask no difficulties, mistakes, failures. Claim no easy victory.
You know, we also want to, and hopefully we can do that this morning, because we know that in the public sphere now there is a lot of discussion, a lot of conversation around the babies who have died at the various hospitals in Jamaica, and our condolences to the mothers and fathers who are also themselves having to deal with, and have been doing this for a while, their precious ones who have died. That conversation happening in the public sphere, and numerous views and things said in haste and anger, and things said because people want to get to the bottom of what's happening and why and how to prevent it from happening again. At some point, we do have to get to how do we prevent this from happening again. At some point, we do have to get to that place in the conversation. We do have to move it to that space. We want to look as widely as possible, too, at the various issues that are impacting the health sector in Jamaica. And we hear that conversation happening in the public sphere, in analytic and other ways. But we also, I believe, have a responsibility and owe ourselves a responsibility, not just to be talkers, but to be doers, regardless of where we are, where we sit, and not to be selfish. There's also a conversation, and selfish is an understatement, because there's a lot of ego and politicizing of health. One thing we must stay away from and try to stay away from as a young nation, and I really do say young in this context, and a nation that's facing so much, is politicizing health. Whatever else we do and however tribal we get, we cannot afford to politicize health. We cannot afford to bring political tribalism into the health sector. There's a danger there that we go down that road, we might never be able to come back from it. And those who will get hurt are the most vulnerable in our society, the poorest in terms of financial poverty in our society, which of course means a bulk of a Jamaican people, means African Jamaicans who do not have the benefit of visa and passport and money to go overseas to seek treatment or even to go to private doctors. So we are on a slippery slope in Jamaica as we continue to make health a political, tribal issue. And then it's also a very thin line that we must walk, because we must hold those who we have entrusted to oversee our health care and the healthcare system. We must hold them responsible when they fail to do so. So how do we balance this is the question. There's an issue that we're going to have to come to sooner or later, and we hear the underlying trends of that and strains of that, rather, in a lot of the conversations, a lot of the interviews, a lot of the discourse that we're hearing about the babies who have died. And that is the issue of antibiotic resistance. The question asked, for example, by Daryl Vaz about MRSA, MRSA, of the Minister of Health, is really not to be taken lightly, because that has to do with antibiotic resistance. And as we talk about infections and how we're treating infections, whether it's in our hospitals or outside of our hospitals, we also do have that bigger issue to look at, and that is that which is hanging over our heads, and what are we doing to ensure that we're prepared for this. So that a few months ago in January, Dr. Alison Nicholson was in the studio with me here discussing that very issue. And I want to replay that because within the context of the conversations and the discussions and what we're hearing happening in the hospitals now, that this interview really is very, very relevant. And we heard her saying then in January of this year that MRSA was already in our hospitals. And I suppose it is innocuous and it is more widespread than we think that it is. So that unless we begin to ask pointed questions about this and unless we begin to talk to our healthcare providers about this, then maybe this will never come up in any kinds of conversation. And because of the conversations that we're having now as a result of a tragedy and the loss of life of 19 now, officially 19 babies, that we're having some of these conversations. It is really a sad time for Jamaica. I am saddened by it, and the righteous indignation that some people are feeling, I think, is well placed in terms of what we see unfolding. But not just that, the response to that by those who have been entrusted with our healthcare, with our systems, health systems. The response or lack of to that, I think, is enough to drive anyone totally berserk and totally angry. And so the righteous indignation, I think, is well placed. In all of that, though, there must be conversations of change. And how do we begin this? There are certain things, from my own perspective, that follows. You know, the debacle that we're witnessing. That responsible people, and some have already, people who are responsible, people with integrity, will take responsibility when, as a captain of a ship, you hit an iceberg, you run aground. Responsible people do take responsibility when things go wrong on their shift that they are ultimately in charge of. And so integrity is what should guide all of us in this. In Jamaica, it's a whole different situation, as we know. A whole different kettle of tea. Integrity goes through the window. I am not about to call for any resignation in this space because I think that this particular issue, integrity should guide this one. Even as the Prime Minister heads this morning, later today, to Anata Bay in St. Mary on the campaign trail, we're saying without anger, without passion, just laying the truth out on the table because it is what it is, that integrity should determine what happens here. More than any other time in our recent history, that it is integrity that's going to be driving this. And you tell us who you are by your action. So it is not what you say you are. It is not what you think you are. It is not what you hope. It is not what you hope you are. But it is what you do that tells us who you are. So the pounding of the pulpit, the screaming from the lungs, the threats from the political podium, really are words written in sand on a rough seashore where the waves are coming in fast and furious. Unless that is followed up by action which backs those words up. So once again, integrity. It is not what you say you are. It is not how hard you pound the pulpit. It is not how loudly you shout. It is not what you think you are. It is what you do ultimately that defines who you are.
When we lose our African connection, we lose our world connection. When we disconnect ourselves from Africa, we cease to be a world people. Without the African connection, we are a disjointed people, begging for the entry into somebody else's house.
Jeffrey Africa. Running Africa ni. Ahaye Jamaica. So what take kakase boso kadia.
All right, we're back with you. In focus now, Egypt has recovered both black boxes from a Russian aircraft that crashed in Sinai, leaving all 224 passengers dead. Egyptian officials also commented on the consequences a tragic incident could have on tourism. Egyptian Civil Aviation Minister Mohammed Kemal said both black boxes of Russia's Flight 9268, which crashed in Egypt's northern Sinai region on Saturday, were recovered. All commercial aircraft are obliged to carry 2 black boxes, one which serves as a flight data recorder, while the other records sound in the cockpit, including the pilot's voice. Kemal told a news conference that communication between the aircraft and air traffic control did not signal irregularities prior to the crash. Egyptian Prime Minister Sharif Ismail defended Kemal's statement, saying there did not appear to be any unusual activity prior to the tragic incident. In a statement following the crash, an Islamic State allied militant group based in northern Sinai claimed responsibility for the crash in a statement. So IS is saying that they are responsible for bringing down the Russian plane in Egypt. In the meantime, Egyptian Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry has warned foreign countries of speculation on the cause of a crash, saying there would be repercussions. In focus now, fees must fall, hashtag fees must fall. Those in South Africa, those who were hoping the fees must fall protest would come to an end on Friday were actually disappointed in South Africa after an explosive beginning to the week where WITS SRC leaders were branded sellouts by angry protesters for striking a deal with university management. Protests continued as the divisions among student leadership spread to other campuses across the country as well. So the protests continue at UCT. Students continue to protest against outsourcing, which the university had earlier committed to review. Protesters barricaded entrances at various points at UCT, and you might have been following that. They burnt garbage. The media, of course, was barred from entering. So we're watching those protests coming out of oppression. As a result of oppression, apartheid is dead. Long live apartheid in South Africa. And because these issues weren't dealt with effectively at the outset, those who controlled power in South Africa during apartheid, those who were in charge of institutions, financial, economic, and otherwise, remain in charge, so that the tail of apartheid is black, but the head and the entire body is actually white. So Western imperialism, apartheid by a different name in South Africa, So now we're seeing a spillover regarding access to education among predominantly black youths in South Africa. It should never have come to this after apartheid. Provisions should have been made, written into the Constitution if needs be, for the education and the ownership of education of black people in South Africa, African people in South Africa. And this is where we have to go skin color, because everybody identifies themselves as African, regardless of who you are in South Africa. But majority of the persons, majority of South Africans, original South Africans, do not have access to education. And that is because those who presided over the post-apartheid period, immediately after apartheid, decided to sell out. And they did. It's about time we call a spade a spade. Now, information coming out of Rwanda. Rwandan lawmakers have removed term limits for the president, allowing the incumbent to rule the country for the next, listen to this, 19 years, ending in 2034. So Kagame is free to rule until 2034 if he decides to contest in 2017. The lower house on Thursday approved a constitutional amendment allowing President Kagame, in power since 2000, to run for a third 7-year term, after which he could run for 2 more terms of 5 years each. If this had happened in Zimbabwe, it would have been all over the local news. But Kagame is backed by the Western powers. We are also looking at Kagame's involvement in the DRC, in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Even as we talk about rape being used as a weapon of war in the Congo. So let's see what the discourse, what the conversation, what the Western news will be saying about this latest development in Rwanda. Alright, going to turn back to South Africa a little because a court has ordered South Africa to pay back seized US $9.3 million to Nigeria. South Africa has to pay back $9.3 million it seized at Lanseria Airport in terms of an order which should end a diplomatic row over allegations of illegal arms deals and money laundering. We're following that one in terms of agreement. The Nigerian government can only buy its military equipment through South Africa's Arms Corps when it does deals in the country. So this is an ongoing issue in South Africa and between South Africa and Nigeria. It's a diplomatic spat. We'll be following it and keeping you informed. You know what's interesting is what's happening with FIFA. The Africans are gunning for FIFA presidency. African heavyweights are aiming to take over the World Soccer governing body's top post following the departure of Sepp Blatter. And we've got candidates such as Musa Hassan Bility from Liberia, Jerome Champagne from France, Gianni Infantino, well, he's from Switzerland, Michel Platini is of France, Sheikh Salam bin Ibrahim Al Khalifa from Bahrain, and Tokyo Sexwali from South Africa. Of course, there is also Ibrahim bin Hassan, bin Al Hussein of Jordan. It's an interesting development. We'll watch and see how this unfolds for FIFA. All right, also in focus, we continue to look at the situation with Ethiopian Jews and the persecution they're facing in Israel thousands, scores, hundreds of Ethiopian Jews, black Ethiopian Jews who are in Israel, even those who were taken from Ethiopia back in the 90s as returning Jews. They are now facing persecution of untold proportions. It is something we're keeping our eyes on. The racism against Africans generally in Israel doesn't get much coverage because of the Jewish ownership of media generally and satellite generally, that we don't hear much about this, but it is within our own interest to find out what's happening with our people, because we do not have a monopoly in the West, in the United States, even when we talk about Black Lives Matter in America, in Britain, in the Western world, on classism and racism. It is what's happening to African people wherever we are. And so that it is through unity. It is through unity, and I believe only through unity that we're going to see a change. How do we get that? How do we get there? We're working towards that. As our brother Kwame Ture says, African people are coming together.
Africa unite. How good and how pleasant it would be before God and man.
All right, so we do have our sister in the studio with us. Our sister Makaba has joined us in the studio. She's just returned from South Africa. In a little while, from Congo. In a little while, we're going to be talking to Professor Tunde Biwaji. But Makaba, my sister, I'm so happy, finally, to meet you face to face. Well, you know what? You're going to have to say that again and tell our listeners and myself what that means.
Yenge Kieno to you, Yaya Kabu, and all of Jamaica. Yenge means peace. When I say Yenge Kieno, it means peace to everyone.
Yenge Kieno.
Kieno.
Yeah. Peace to everyone.
Yeah.
You were born in Jamaica. Let us start there, because when I spoke to you last time, you were like in the Congo.
Yeah.
Right? But and then we're going to go to the Congo. But you were born in Jamaica. How did you get to that? Did you always, for example, in Jamaica, know of your African? Were you an African conscious person? Know of yourself?
No. I left as a child. I mean, my family, they're staunch Christians, really. I left as a child, and as I grew up, I was looking for something deeper, something wider, and I was searching and searching. Then I started asking, and some years later.
And this was in England that you were looking.
Yeah,
you began that search.
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
Because I went there as a child, and as I grew up, I was thinking, there must be something. Once I started working, I kept thinking, no, this can't be it. There must be something more to life. There's something missing, and I kept asking and asking, and then when I started going to Africa, I went to Gambia, Ghana, and I sort of got introduced to African spirituality there, and I thought, no, there's something not quite right. And then after I found out about the Bukongo, Bundudia Congo, and the teachings of Bukongo, and I said, yeah, this sounds right.
Well, how did you find that? And I understand going to the Gambia and going to Ghana, because I've been to, and you were the person who introduced me, actually, through my husband, to Bundudia Congo. I didn't know about that before.
Yeah. Well, when I came back, I think it was 1999, I went to Ghana, and when I went for 3 months with a friend of mine. Actually, we were supposed to travel to Nigeria, Togo, but we ended up staying 3 months in Ghana. And when I was there, we were saying, no, this is not the way, because just how things were, there's something missing from this one. And as soon as we came back, we met somebody. There was somebody giving a lecture in one of the libraries in London, and we spoke to somebody connected to that person, and he was talking about the Bukongo. And then when I heard him when I went for an appointment with him and I heard what he was saying, I got interested and I spoke a bit more, and I thought, okay, this feels like the right thing. And I did some more research, found out some more about it, and I said, yes, it felt right. And I knew it was right. And since then, I've been following that since about 2000. And so far, it's not disappointed me. I feel it's the correct way to go.
Taking you all the way to the Congo.
Yeah,
so we're going to come forward after our discussion with Dr. Tunde Biwaji to talk about Bundu Congo, and then to talk about Congo itself. Going to be going to the phone lines to speak with Professor Tunde Biwaji of the University of the West Indies. Professor Biwaji, of course, one of the organizers of the African Film Festival that's coming up in a short while at the University of the West Indies. And also, we are looking ahead to the conference in Nigeria at Ile-Ife. Professor Biwaji, good morning.
Yes, good morning. How are you?
I miss you. You're supposed to be in the studio.
Yes.
Through no fault of yours, you're where you are.
Well, you know.
Yeah, we're looking forward to having you in the studio very, very soon, actually.
Yes.
Well, quickly, my sister is here from the Bundu Congo. She's going to be sitting with us through this program. But but tell us, Professor Biwaji, a little bit about the background to the African Film Festival that's going to be happening at UE.
Oh, okay. The Africa World Documentary Film Festival is an annual calendar event which Professor Niyikoka Desmond Lee, professor of film at the University of Missouri, started, and it takes it all over the world. It has been shown at the Cave Hill campus for a number of years.
Mm-hmm.
When I was in Brooklyn College as a visiting professor in 2011-2012, he approached me to ask if Mona campus would be interested in hosting the festival. When I looked at the objectives and the goals of the festival, I found that it was quite a very good educational and also cultural thing.
Yes.
What the film festival does is this. Currently, you know that the channels for news and information is dominated from Western media, and consequently, what you find is that most of the information about Africa and the African diaspora are, presented through the prism of the views of others.
Yes.
And he felt that there is no better way to know what is happening to a people than when they tell their own stories. And when they tell their own stories, they will be telling it from their own experiences, from their own perspectives, from their own identity configurations, as well as from the challenges that they face on a daily basis. And consequently, the film festival is an avenue for promoting that, for giving voice to the people who otherwise would not have had a voice, to relate their own experience, to tell the world, what they feel, what they see, and so on.
Yes.
Now, one element of that is that it then makes it possible for those who would otherwise have been voiceless to be able to say, to be able to relate to the world and present their own life. So apart from that, a documentary film is totally different from fiction. A fiction film, would probably have relation to life, but it can be totally cooked up. Whereas a documentary, it's like history. It's like, living history in a visual manner. It's like you allow people to see exactly on a daily basis the experiences of the people, in the documentary. Because the word says it's documentary, so it documents the experiences, the real life situations of people. And when you view such films, you are able to relate to it. You are able to see yourself, in the films. And that's very, very critical.
It really does make a difference. And when the films that will be shown this year, these are predominantly or totally from the continent of Africa?
No. That's exactly the beauty of it. For example, the opening ceremony is at 5:30 in Neville Hall Lecture Theatre on Thursday. And after all the ceremony, that is, the High Commissioner for Nigeria speaking, the Dean and all that, the first film that will be shown is actually based, on the experience of Haiti. And the title of this film is Noise Runs. What Noise Run does is this. After the earthquake in 2010 and the hurricane that followed it and the displacement of, people from Haiti, there were all kinds of promises for reconstruction, for housing, for all those things, which never materialized.
Yes.
And consequently, the United Nations sent army, they sent soldiers into the place to keep peace, to make sure that there was order. And then remember, they also had some health issues.
The outbreak of cholera, yes.
Yes. You see, this particular film, which is very short, just 18 minutes,
wow,
documents that experience. It gives people an insight into actually what happened in the, what you can call the camps. The camps for the displaced, how they lived their lives, how they tried to survive, and especially, a lot of the news was being suppressed.
Yes.
So that the outside world would not get it. But when you say noise runs, what you are saying is that noise travels, news spreads. And this particular group of young people, they are trying to make their voices heard by showing exactly what was happening within Haiti during that period of time. And then after the opening ceremony, the next one is based in Cuba. Okay? The next movie is based in Cuba, and it's for 33 minutes.
Yes.
And now what this does is to tell us the experience of over 250,000 people who in 1961 took it upon themselves to teach another almost 1 million people how to read and write. You know that Cuba has one of the highest literacy rate in the region,
yes,
even compared to Jamaica. There are many people in Jamaica who cannot read and write.
That's true.
Who cannot even sign their names. But in Cuba, it was a group of volunteers, young and old, almost 250,000 in 1961, who volunteered to teach everybody to read and write. Now, that particular film, Maestra, is a documentary on that to show how it happened and to show the challenges that they face. And especially, more significantly, those volunteers themselves, they became transformed. Okay, in the process of going from one place to the other, teaching people to read and write. It was also an educational process for them. That is what that does.
All right, and these two... go ahead.
To cap the evening, there's another one on the Garifuna Nation. And you know the Garifuna Nation is about Belize, Honduras, and Puerto Rico.
Yes.
And now in their own experience is to show, the Afro-Puerto Rican experience, when slavery came into Puerto Rico and all that, the blending of the Black Caribs, that is the Caribbean people, the Caribs, and the West Africans who joined them, and how the culture was formed, what you know as Garifuna. Okay, that's what that movie does, and it's just almost about 1 hour and 20 minutes. So
and these
see that there is a lot of it that is Caribbean. The way we have selected it, the festival this year is to ensure that a lot of it is reflective of the Caribbean or the diaspora experience.
I really am looking forward to it, and I'm especially interested in the one in Haiti also. But there's an opening ceremony, which is more of a formal event.
Yes, but that's just about 1.5 hours.
Right, and that happens when?
The next session is the 2 movies that I have shown.
Right, and what date is that?
That's on Thursday.
Thursday,
Thursday is 5th. I think that's the 5th.
November 5.
Yes.
Right, on Thursday. So this is, the documentary opens in just a few, the film festival opens in just a few days time, beginning on Thursday. And so there's a full, the opening ceremony, is that open to the public?
Yes, it is. Everybody is invited. We have sent invitations to schools, to the general public, and also the invitation is being sent to your listeners.
Yes.
And those who follow you on the streaming. Actually, that's one of the benefits of speaking with you. We are able to get, access to your broad audience.
Right.
Everybody is invited.
Right.
I mean, it's, you see, the thing is that it's, there is a lot of gap that needs to be filled. On Sunday last week, I think it was Martin Henry who had written that thing about.
I really didn't want to raise it here, Dr. Biwaji. I made a decision not to even mention it. But since you have raised it,
yes.
And I wish that you didn't. But if you really need to.
Yes. No, I just feel that there is so much information that people need to get. And there is no better way for people to get information than when they participate in those edifying things themselves.
Yes.
And when they are exposed to the other side of the story. When I read the article, I said there's nothing new here that many of us have not said. You remember I would always preface my own debate about reparations with apologies.
Yes, yes.
That's just a basic thing. And having people now tell their own stories through film also presents an avenue for you to have a good dialogue, even with the movie makers, the filmmakers themselves. Some of them are coming. And then you'll be able to ask questions, and you'll be able to lay the ghost of a lot of misinformation, a lot of, ideas that are swirling all around there, which have no basis in reality. It is through the experience of the people who go through these things that you can begin to correct those mistakes.
Exactly. And we're happy that this is happening. I think all of us should really tap into these kinds of interactions with ourselves, ourselves in the Caribbean, ourselves on the continent of Africa, understanding that the oneness. And I think this is where we're having the disconnect, is where we really do need to bridge that gap. We're disconnected through the language, through culture, through even the miseducation processes and articles like those back from Mr. Martin Henry.
That always baffles me. You see, when we do these things, we have the Edna Manley School of Visual and Performing Arts.
Yes.
In most cases, there isn't a robust interaction between the cultural developments on UWI campus and that particular college, as well as the various teaching schools, that is the education schools. I mean, you have Michael, you have Shortwood, you have all the colleges that prepare teachers, teachers who go into the school system to teach. In most cases, the kinds of enrichment programs that they should be exposed to like this, nobody comes, they don't come, even their own lecturers. I don't know if they're sensitive to some of these things.
No, so because we have to, I think, Dr. Biwaji, that we really do have to get to the core of religion and school, so-called Christian institutions, and where the focus is. We saw, for example, the Daily Observer, Friday, October 30, and the Lord Bishop Dr. Howard Gregory, Bishop of Jamaica of the Cayman Islands, and the statement that was put out, not just in the Observer, but also in the Daily Gleaner. And it tells us something that we have to get to the core of how Christianity and religion is still being used in Jamaica today to divide us as a people, so that somebody like Lord Bishop Dr. Howard Gregory can't even recognize at his level religious discrimination. So we do have a problem. We have a problem.
It's very serious. Even within the Christian group, there's a lot of discrimination, there's a lot of bickering, there's a lot of disunity. Not to mention, vis-a-vis the rest of the society. So one can only hope that through ventures like this, that you have people who would come and who will be enlightened and who will then take up the challenge of, raising questions and helping the rest of the community to get better information.
But you must be commended, that you're doing the work they're doing at the University of the West Indies. The conference, the Pan-African conference last year was really the right step in the right direction at the right time. And I think the information, even if it seems gradual, it's getting to the people. The film festival, I think this will also get to people. And the thing for us is not to get weary, as Muja says, but to continue the process of reunification for development. And this is also really a brilliant step. So it starts on Thursday with the opening ceremony, open to the public at what time?
The opening ceremony is 5:30 p.m. so that everybody who may have gone to work, they might be able to, after they finish work about 4:30, they'll be able to find their ways to Neville Hall Lecture Theatre at 5:30.
And then that's going to go for about an hour, and right after that there'll be two films. One is 18 minutes.
The ceremony will go on till about 6:30, 6:45. We want to make it very brief so that we can go into the filming themselves.
Right.
And then the very first film will be at 7 o'clock. And by 9 p.m., we want everybody to be able to go home, take their refreshment, and then come back on Friday at 2 p.m. And then it starts at 2 p.m. on Friday, goes on till about 9, different films. Right. Then on Saturday, the same thing. And then on Sunday, which is the final day, I mean, when everybody can now come with their families, especially children, to participate in an educational experience, which will be enriching for throughout life. That will be the kind of the planning that we have.
All right. Well, we're going to continue to talk about this across Area FM, and you'll hear more interviews. We'll also ensure that it's up on our social media pages.
Is also free to stream some of these things, on your online template.
Yes, irfm.net. Thank you so much. We will be doing that. We really do appreciate that also on our YouTube channel. Thank you so much, Dr. Bewaji. Just before you go, though, we're also looking ahead to the festival the symposium. It is
that's
in Nigeria.
The other thing, with that is this. Over time, there is a tendency, actually recently I challenged some of my students during the discussion. I said to them that the fact that you have Christianity the way it is probably a function of where Christianity was coming from.
Yes.
That Jamaicans are very good Christians. That is why they don't snitch. Because the first person in the Bible who snitched, who betrayed Jesus Christ, was condemned for eternity. And consequently, good Christians don't, point fingers at people who may have done wrong. What I was trying to do there was not to condemn Christianity as such, but to say that you find a society that is supposed to be a Christian country that is virtually falling apart. The way it is falling apart, crime is very rife, and nobody seems to wake up and say that this is unchristian. I said that's because Christianity in itself has been individualistic compared with the indigenous religions of Africa, which saw the individual within the context of community and whose sense of community cannot, override that whose sense of individuality cannot override the sense of community. Now, what we are going to be doing, what some of us got together to do, which is now a global African movement now, is to begin a re-examination of indigenous African religions, and especially how it worked in the past, and how it has been integrated into some of the migrant religions of Islam and Christianity and others that we now find in Africa, and to begin to do an assessment, whereby we begin to also formulate in a more robust manner the scripture of those indigenous religions as well as their liturgies, just to be able to now say to posterity that we had something that was fundamental, which never was a bickering kind of religiosity, which never fought, anybody, but which knew exactly where it was coming from and where it was going. And those are the indigenous African religions, and we want to bring people together. The masses of the practitioners and the academics in global Africa are now, they are now warming up to coming to Ile-Ife.
So this is going to be in Ile-Ife.
Centrally, we now have a new of Ife. Obadewusi, the former one, joined the ancestors a few months back, and a new one has now been installed. Okay. So that's the thing.
What's the time?
Inviting everybody to come with us.
What's the time frame? What's the time frame we're looking at?
Oh, the symposium itself is August next year. Okay. And after that, we will then go to Shobo. In Shobo you have the bigger festival that always runs every year, where we commemorate the Shobo and various other cultural things. People who go for that conference, we want them to make it a package. After the symposium, we want them to go for another week in Oshobo so that they can have the cultural participation and enrichment that goes with it.
All right. We're going to hear much more from you, Professor Biwaji, about this. But just to say to persons, if you're interested in traveling to the symposium and then to the festival in Nigeria during the month of August next year, then this is what is being planned. I don't know if there is a collective trip that is going to be organized in terms of people traveling together.
The facilitation for that is being coordinated with the Nigeria High Commission, which is on 5 Waterloo Road. And you don't really need, if you are traveling, if you are just transiting through European countries like Amsterdam and other places, you might not need a visa if you are not staying longer than 2-3 hours. In the airport.
It would be nice though if say this is being facilitated through the Nigerian High Commission here in Jamaica, that if we get enough people to travel, that we just go straight to Nigeria.
Yes.
That will take us about 3 hours.
No, it
or 4.
If there is an airline that is interested and sees a critical mass of travelers, like over 100 or so, from Kingston to Lagos will be about 5-6 hours.
There you go, straight to Lagos.
Compared with having to go first to Europe or America, for 4 hours and then another 7 or 8 hours. Yeah. Because we have an open air agreement with Nigeria. Jamaica has an open air agreement with Nigeria. But it's just that it happened at a time when both the Air Jamaica and Nigeria Airways have been, are dead. Yes. So you don't really have you have an agreement,
we have a problem. We don't have an airplane. We don't have a transport, but we'll get that. We're getting there. And this for us it will be such a statement in August next year. We must talk to the Minister of Transport to facilitate that as part of and
to encourage people. And the investment opportunities are huge. You have in Nigeria alone, you have over 170 million people. In Lagos alone, you have more than 10 million people.
Wow.
I mean, you can imagine if you are producing anything in that place and you are selling it, you can see how much profit,
Yes.
And that is why occasionally when I go back to Nigeria, I find that the plane is full of Asians and Europeans, and you are wondering where are they going? Are they going to Europe, or they are going to my country?
They're going to your country.
And the reason they are going there is because there's so much money that they are going there to get.
Right. And they do that without fear. They do not talk about, diseases like African people talk about diseases among themselves.
I mean, and they do not. Boko Haram has been contained to the northeast.
Right, but we talk about that among ourselves. That's the thing, is that black people, African people, to go into an African country, this is where we go. We talk about, I'm going to go catch something, or, Boko Haram. But the Asians don't. They go into they even go into Boko Haram areas to set up shop.
That's where the funds are. That's where they make the money.
But Dr. Biwaj, we really do have to. You see why you need to be in the studio, right? But we're looking forward to getting you in the studio very, very soon to talk some more about this. The film festival is happening this week. It starts on Thursday at the Mona campus, Neville Hall Lecture Theatre. Please do go. And Dr. Biwaj will arrange some more interviews across Area FM throughout the week. Thank you so much, my brother.
Yes.
All right. Dr. Tunde Biwaj there. And of course, we encourage you to think about going to that African Traditional Religion Festival Symposium that's going to be happening in Ile-Ife. I think that we need to be there. We need to be part of that conversation. I think some of this that Dr. Biwaj was talking about will be right up your street, because you talked about your own search and even the fact that the symposium is going to be happening in Nigeria soon. But do you want to respond to anything you heard from Dr. Biwaj there?
I think I was laughing at a few of the comments, because one of the things that happens when I say I'm going to Africa, or I say to people, why don't you go to Africa, just see what it's like, they say, oh, do you have to take an injection? Oh, I'm scared of this. Oh, are there animals there? Or they make up all the excuses, not because they don't want to go, because of the negative things that they've heard.
Yes.
But also, I think what he's saying about telling our own story, it's very important for us to tell our own story. Then we can put the truth there, as long as it's not distorted. I'm all for telling our own story.
Right, and that's going to be happening with the film festival. I really think, and I must say to the African family in Jamaica and to the wider IRFM family, please go up to the University of the West Indies Thursday, Friday, Saturday and Sunday. Take your children, especially on Sunday, to be part of the experience of touching base with who we are on a wider level. Be part of this film documentary film festival that's happening up there at UWI. Yes, go ahead, Makaba.
I was thinking about what you were saying about flying direct from Jamaica to Nigeria. I'm sure that there are people within the Caribbean. You can get more than 100 people to fill a plane.
Yes.
If that message goes out, I'm sure you can do that.
And it is something that we should actually work at. It's going to be August next year, and sounds really, really good actually to make that trip. To Nigeria. All right, we were talking about your own search for yourself as an African woman, and how you found yourself through that process to the point of Bundu Dia Congo. What is Bundu Dia Congo?
Bundu Dia Congo is a cultural and a spiritual group. They also have a political party, and what Bundu Dia Congo are trying to do is to bring back the culture, bring back the language. The language is very important part of the culture, and put Africa back in the seat of respect, that throne of respect throughout the world where we should be.
Yeah.
That's the basic of Bundu Dia Congo.
And I heard you say it's spiritual. It's at a spiritual base, an economic base, and a political base.
Yes.
And I think this is brilliant. This is what is missing from our own interactions, whether we're doing religious groups or calling ourselves spiritual, or we tend to do one or the other, not all three.
Yeah.
But Bundu Dia Congo embraces all three.
It embraces all three, and one of the things the Trinity in Nsako, Mpanzu, and Zinga, they have three different attributes. Those are the three main attributes of our Creator. That's love, which comes through spirituality. Then you have intelligence, which comes through science, and power, which comes through politics. And one of the saying is Nsako, Mpanzu, and Zinga, for those three ancestors, Tubunda Mpandu, Katfambudi Panduko. That's those three attributes. You unite wisdom, you don't separate it. So we always put those three things together.
Could you say them slowly for me, please?
We say Nsako, Mpanzu, and Zinga. Those are the three.
Nsako.
Yeah, Mpanzu, and Zinga. That's the line that we're coming from. Those three lines. That's a trinity, and we say Tubunda Mpandu, Katuvambudi Panduko. We unite wisdom, we don't separate it. So the love, the spirituality, the science comes in the intelligence, and the power that's coming through politics. We do not separate those, we put them together. So I'm not talking about politics as we see it today. The politics, the way it should be, it should encompass all those elements. And there was something that...
So you're not saying that about political tribalism and partisan politics?
No.
It's about politics in a broader sense.
In a broader sense.
Which underscores power.
Yes.
So this is where power comes from.
And everything, the foundation of everything is love.
You're free Africa. Running Africa niye. Ahaye Jamaica. So what take kakase boso kadia.
All right, so the point is well taken about how Bundu Dear Congo sees itself not just as one, as a singular entity, but as Trinity, and there is also the focus on the spiritual. Even though it's a Trinity, there is a strong focus on the spiritual, as there is on the economic and the political. Let's look a little bit at the spiritual aspect of things. Tell us about that African spirituality.
Well. We have our own book. It's called the Makongo or the Makaba, and in that book is our history, a history that you won't find anywhere else. And you find many stories there. Many of our prophets are in there. Some of those stories are quite amazing. Quite amazing.
Will we find Yaya Kimpavita?
Yaya Kimpavita is in there. Mfumu Kimbangu is in there. And I just wanted to point out that our two prophets that we celebrate within Bundu Dear Congo is Yaya Vita Kimpa and Mfumu Kimbangu. Yaya Vita Kimpa, we celebrate her in July, and I was fortunate to be in Congo at that celebration. And Mfumu Kimbangu, we celebrate him in October, so we've just had that celebration. Mfumu Kimbangu is a big prophet, and he's still working with us now.
I want to talk about both of them, so our listeners understand what we are talking about and who we are talking about, because these are not figments of our imagination. No. These are real people who are part of a liberation process of the continent of Africa. Let us talk about Yaya first of all. I really do love her. I found myself in her.
Well, you never know. Yaya Vita Kimpa, she was a young woman. She was born in a place called Songololo, and I actually traveled through Songololo when I was in Congo. And when she was 17, she became ill, and they thought she'd died. And when they were about to bury her, she woke up and basically said, "What are you doing?" They said, "Oh, we thought you were dead." She said, "No, I just went to the spiritual world to learn, and now I'm back." So she was ready to start her work to free Congo from all the foreign religions, and also to rebuild the spiritual capital for us as Africans, Mbanza, Congo. So that city was existing, and then it was destroyed by the Europeans. Then she came, she rebuilt that city, and it was a very beautiful city.
And she really led a war, literally, against Western imperialism and the Europeans, physically and otherwise.
Yes. She was doing her work. She wasn't afraid. She was a young woman. She started her work at 17, and she was talking to the people all the time. and she was praying. She was doing all that she could.
And she brought the African spirituality in terms of how she redirected Africans' attention into, we are the purveyors, we are the originators of the God consciousness.
Yes.
So God is us. God is African in any case. And the way she identified the African religious figures as Africans, even through the Western teachings.
Well, she had a great following, and she was talking about African spirituality all the time, and many people left Christianity and other religions to come over because they realized she was talking truth. So she had many followers, and the Portuguese authorities at that time, they were not happy. The father, can you imagine? They when she went into the mountains to pray with her followers, some of her followers, they caught her and beat her, and then they got the firewood, put her in the fire, wanted her to denounce African spirituality, but she said no. They wanted her to say that Christianity was the right thing and she'd made a mistake. She wouldn't do that. By that time she was 21, and they put her in the fire. There was another lady, another prophet working with her at that time. She was called Mama Mafuta. Mama Mafuta was in the village, and she went to Mama Mafuta and said, look, there's somebody burning in the mountains, and you're here. Mama Mafuta ran. She saw it was Yaya Vita Kimpa. After that time, Yaya Vita Kimpa, she could be seen for 40 days around talking to the people, and then she disappeared. But her story is one of the great stories.
Yes, and we know so much about Joan of Arc, but we don't know about Yaya Vita Kimpa as African people. And her story is a story that we should all be telling. One of the things I really do like about her, and we're talking about facts now, we're not talking about fiction, we're not talking about myth, we're talking about what really happened, is the way she changed a narrative on who God is, and who our prophets are, and how she went as far as to say, listen, you know, if you say Jesus, and Jesus was born in the Congo, you know, I mean, as simple as that, you know, so that life started in Africa, and that Congo is at the center of that, and she saw that this way. So this is Yaya Vita Kimpa, who is one of the prophets of the Bundu Congo.
But if you go in internet, you will see so many distorted stories, and they're even calling her like the Joan of Arc or something like that. But it's very distorted, and they say things like she was pregnant and that's why they killed her. But what she actually said was something would be born in Nkamba, and that something that was born in Nkamba was in 1887. That was Simon Kimbangu. He was born the same year as Marcus Garvey.
Because she was doing this, she was actually prophesying.
Yes, she did. She prophesied that the coming of Fumu Kimbangu, and when Fumu Kimbangu came, his story, you need to know his story. If you don't know his story, his stories of
well, I've been doing a lot of reading on that, but tell our listeners a little bit about Fumu Kimbangu.
Okay, Simon Kimbangu, when we say Fumu Kimbangu, it's like the chief, he's like the king, because that's the title he earned. He, as was prophesied, was born in 1887 in Nkamba, and he was a minister. He was training to be a minister. He was in the Christian church, but at one point Spirit came to him and said, now it's time for you to do your work. He tried to do the exams to be that minister, but every time he tried to go, something happened. He couldn't make it. But when they told him it's time to stand up to do your work, he started doing his work. He did many miracles, like raised people from the dead, made the blind see, that kind of thing. And in 1921, he stood up in a great big arena and made a prophetic speech. And in that speech, he told that he was going to be imprisoned for a long time. and the Belgian authorities, he said, would come to imprison him. He spoke about the people who went into the Americas, that's us, who would come back to help in the fight for our liberation, our full liberation. He spoke about the African people being seduced by materialistic lifestyle, and they would want to leave Africa, go into Europe, not wanting to speak their language, etc., etc. He prophesied many, many things, and so many of those things have come to pass. He said that there's one coming after him who would write the sacred book for us, and he instructed one man who was called Simon Mpadi to wait. He couldn't die until he saw that book that had to be written. And
that book is the Macabre?
That book is the Macabre.
Do you have
or the
a copy of
Macongo. That book is not just given to anybody.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
so
I don't
who
have
gets
a copy. Normally people, Zikwa, where we go to our practice, we call it Zikwa, not church or anything like we call it Zikwa. Normally a Zikwa would have a Macongo. It's not like a personal thing for someone, even though there are some people who may have that personally, but it's normally given to the Zikwa. Anyway.
How is it different, the Macabre, from other religious texts? Or the Macongo?
It's different in the sense, as I was saying, it's written by us and it's written for us. It has our prophets, it has our story, it's written in Kikongo, our original language. And that's very important. So it's not some book we found, there was a book, the original book is called the Sun Tzu, that was burnt by the Europeans many, many years ago, many, many centuries ago, and that burnt copy is in the Belgian Museum. So now we have the Macongo. Wandon Semi is written in.
That burnt copy is now in the Belgian Museum?
I believe that's in, it's not,
but it should be returned. But it should be returned, legible or not, it should be returned to the Congo.
Well, if you went to Belgium and took up everything that was ours.
Yeah, exactly, you'll be taking up all of Belgium, literally.
Anyway,
yes. But we should still talk about that.
I want to continue about Fumukimbangu because there's a very important...
All right, I just want you to wrap up that aspect of him so that we can do another interview and come back to the conversation.
Okay.
Yes, but go ahead.
Yeah, so Fumukimbangu, he spent 30 years in prison from 1921 to 1951. And that prison was to pay for our sins as African people. He sacrificed
And
himself.
You say sins?
Well, all the wrongs that we have done, he made that sacrifice in prison for us. And he suffered the most inhumane conditions. He was in a glass jar in water and he was lashed every day. He knew when he was going to die, and he told them. And what happened, the day he was going to die at the time, he just knocked his side, and then he died at that time, 3 o'clock. When they went to do the autopsy, no organs inside.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm not liking that idea of somebody, dying for the sins of Africans and so on. That to me is very similar to the Western way of saying that, so we're all sinners, and so this person died for your sins and so on. And I'm trying to reconcile that with even Yaya Vita Kimpa and with African spirituality as a whole. Then how do you reconcile that aspect of the Bundo Dea Congo, that this one man was in prison for so long, was flogged and so on, and then it's considered that he did that for the sins of Africans? Because Africans on a whole, we must look at the transatlantic trade in Africans and the enslavement of Africans. That Africans were whipped and beaten on the Middle Passage, on the plantations, and many Africans suffered that, not because of any sins of their own or wrongdoing of their own, but because of the cruelty of another race.
Yeah.
So how do you then embrace all of that to yourself?
I mean, it's very difficult to even try to comprehend what he went through. But in his time in prison, he was also could be seen many places. He was doing his spiritual work. He could be seen many places.
And yes, and I've read that. Rhonda Clark is the mother of Jade Basco. Jade Basco is now the head girl of St. Hilda's High School, and we just wanted to do a quick follow-up with Ms. Clark about that we haven't spoken to her since the ruling of the public defender, and also since the reinstatement of her daughter as head girl. So Rhonda joins me on the phone line. Good morning, Rhonda.
Good morning, Andrea.
All right, so happy to have you with us this morning under more pleasant circumstances, I might add. Justice has been served, I would say. But as first of all, your own response to the fact that your daughter has been reinstated as the head girl of St. Hilda's High School, how do you feel personally?
I am comfortable, very much comfortable that the public defender would highlight that students have rights as well, and I'm so comfortable to know that is out there in the public.
And just for a quick background for persons who do not know, your daughter was named head girl, was badged, and then because it was thought that she might have been Jehovah's Witness, she was debadged because it was said at the time that the two weren't compatible, being a Jehovah's Witness and being a head girl of an Anglican based high school. So lots happened in between. The public defender got involved and did her own investigations, found that there was religious discrimination, and advised that that Jade be reinstated. She has since been reinstated. How is she doing?
She's okay. She's focusing now, and she's happy that the matter has been resolved, and she can now focus on her CSEC exams. And she's all right. She's comfortable because the whole school population is with her. So she's not at all uncomfortable there at St. Hilda's.
Because that was one of the main concerns that I had as a parent, and also somebody who's gone through the school system, of course, that how would that work once she's reinstated? What would the relationship be like with her and others? Would it be a tense environment? What would be the relationship with the principal and the teachers and so on? So you're saying that they're working that through?
Yeah, she's the teachers are supportive of Jade because they were the one who had selected her in the first place, and students as well who still respect her. So she's coping, and even the auxiliary staff, Andrea, they're all there supporting Jade, in the with the post, because they all feel comfortable that she's the fitted, with the post, because they all feel comfortable that she's the fitted person for that post.
How was the reinstatement done?
Well, as far as Jade told me, is that Bishop Leon Greg came to the school on Monday morning, and he said it to the school population during the devotional exercise. Has
there been any conversations with you as a mother so far with anyone in authority?
No, there hasn't been any. There's no conversation with me. I mean, the public defender called me as well to advise me, asking how is everything. That's it. But there's no conversation from the school, anything with regards to the situation.
That's unusual.
But I'm okay.
Yeah, I know you're okay, but that's unusual, isn't it? Because unless things change, because I remember if I got 1 point lower than I'm supposed to get, my mother would have to come meet guidance counsel and so on. So I'm wondering, if I hear you saying you're okay, and you're letting. So this is it then. Life has returned to as close to normal as possible.
Yes, but I want to just appeal to parents that they need to listen to their children, hear their cry. I mean, children are very sensitive, and we must always try to listen to our children, hear what they have to say, because, I mean, this could have affected Jade, quite a bit, and because I take it up, I mean, she's comfortable and able to go on with her schoolwork. So I'm just appealing to parents, just listen listen to your children, because at least this would enable them to be better persons in today's society, especially when you know that your child is conforming to the values, these good values that you're instilling in them. Because I see where Jade conforms to my teaching. So when she comes home and being so upset about a situation that she has been, denied of a position that she knows she has all right to, I mean, you have to get on top of it. You have to be there as a parent.
Yes.
So I'm just appealing to the parents of this nation just to listen to your children and act upon whatever situation they have.
And I think that's go ahead.
I must truly give thanks to Tekla. I think that's the gentleman that first called in.
Yes, Tekla McFred. Yes.
Right. He is really a good example of a good parent as well, because I mean, his child, it didn't really affect his child personally, but then
he listened, as you said, he listened to his own child,
right,
and recognized that that there was a bigger picture. Yes.
So then I'm just Andrea, I'm just asking that, parents, listen to your children and remember that children has rights as well.
And thank you so much for maintaining that respectful tone throughout the entire thing. I think you've set a really good example for your own daughter, because this was not an easy situation, especially because a lot of it was being played out in the public sphere, that you had to walk that tightrope literally in ensuring that there was no disrespect. So that was a good example. We're going to keep in touch with you, as I said before, and also to watch Jade, because Jade is in the hearts of most Jamaicans right now. And we are rooting for her. We wish her all the best at St. Hilda's. She is a head girl. She's now sitting her exams and thinking of going on. What does she want to do later on? Do you know?
Well, Jade wants to pursue a career in law. Yes, that's where she said it. But that's why I know my child has that leadership position. Yes. One teacher at the school called her judge. So, she's always there interacting and producing this leadership.
She has had some very early introduction to the Constitution. All right, Rhonda, thank you so much. I know that we've I'm going to make some comments later on, because I've noticed that the Lord Bishop Dr. Howard Gregory wrote in the paper that no discrimination. It's not for you to comment on. I'm going to be looking at that and talking about it later. But thank you so much. All the best. Let us know how she's doing, and give Jade our love. Thanks so much.
Thanks, and thanks for the public support. And have a nice day now.
You too. All right, so that is Rhonda Clark. She is the mother of Jade Basco, and really a strong mother who really stood by her daughter when she needed her in a public way. And this must be one of the times that Jade needed her mother most. And she stood there, stood strong, and was a good example. There are many children in Jamaica who are not doing so well in school. There are many children in Jamaica, and we say we're about to leave these children by the way. High school, a lot of our young boys and young girls, we're talking about teenage pregnancy trending down generally in Jamaica, but at the same time we're talking about a teenage pregnancy and underage preteen pregnancy trending up in the west of Jamaica and so on. And we're talking about classroom behaviors. We're finding students are being found in Jamaica with guns in their bags, with bullets in their bags and so on. And here we have a child. All she did was to say Jehovah, and she was punished in the worst possible ways. We have to get our priorities straight in Jamaica. We've got to get our priorities straight. We have a problem when religion blinds us in the way that it did in the Jade Basco case. Then we know this is a crisis moment for Jamaica. Here inside of the Africa Forum, it is Running African. On the Jade Basco case in the Observer, Friday, October 13, I think it was also in the Daily Gleaner too, pages 3 and 19, by the way, carried the opinions and statement of Lord Bishop Dr. Howard Gregory, Bishop of Jamaica and the Cayman Islands, re the Jade Basco situation. And in the statement, some of the points that came out of, that were highlighted in the statement, it said in recent weeks, the focus of the media on St. Hilda's, and that the mass media became the arena within which an issue between an aggrieved parent and student at the institution, that is such a slap in the face to all of us from a man of Bishop Dr. Howard Gregory's standing. I am saddened by this. He says, while such discourse may be an expression of free media and healthy democracy, nonetheless pointed to the undesirability of this avenue to resolve such issues in a manner which protects the integrity of all concerned. And the question then, is this about integrity primarily or justice? That's a question that we have. We're concerned. It says that the particular dispute was not brought to the attention of the Board of Management as a first step as per education regulations. Also point to, talked about the media and that this was not an initiative. It's interesting because for us, regardless of the regulations regarding this was not brought to the media by an aggrieved parent. In other words, a parent of a child. This was brought to the media by another parent whose own child was traumatized by this situation ongoing at the school. So this is something that the Reverend did not take into consideration, and the parent did reach out, did what he thought was best at the time, which we think also was the best thing to do. It is religion again saying to people that we must take a divergent gaze. This must be our stance, because religion does that in Jamaica, a divergent gaze away from the troubling things. And we find that, for example, right now in the case of the what everybody's calling the dead baby scandal, we see that the church assumes a divergent gaze away from this. But we're talking about lives lost and babies' lives being lost. But we're talking about also statements being made, even though there was an apology afterwards by our own Minister of Health regarding whether or not these were babies in the real sense. And, I am saying this understanding many, many different aspects of this. And as I said in this space earlier this morning, I'm not about to call for any resignation in this particular situation, because for me, integrity must speak. I do know Minister Ferguson pretty well. Consider him a friend to this program, a friend to Running African, and he's been so for a long time. Considered him also on our treks to Africa, somebody who showed a serious interest in that interaction between Africa and Jamaica. So that I am talking from many different perspectives, but understanding at the same time that integrity must determine how the minister moves on from here. And it's not an easy thing to step aside or to take responsibility. It's not an easy thing, especially after so much public brouhaha. But at some point, and I believe that there is integrity there with Mr. Ferguson. I think he has integrity, and we wait for him to do the right thing. Like all Anglican schools, St. Hilda's has an inclusive policy. The article says with regard to the admission of schools, and that they do not discriminate on the basis of religion. It sent me, after I read the article, to go study again, to go read up again, what is the definition of religious discrimination. The article, he says, the graduates, they aim to produce our citizens who have a sense of national consciousness and civic responsibility consistent with their philosophy and theological understanding. Also, he said, as Anglicans, they take seriously the promotion of civic pride and respect for our system, their system of governance, and those who exercise leadership of our nation, reflected, he says, in our integrity, in our liturgies, and in the relationship which we promote between church and state. He also said that at orientation, parents are asked to indicate the religious affiliation of their children. Now, under the name of heaven and everything that is good, and in the name of all the ancestors who have come and gone and come again, why is that important? Why is that important? Why under God's name is that important? Surely this is not what Jesus intended, for religion to be used to divide us, for religion to be used in the name of Christianity to be so divisive. This is why we cannot condone the statement. And look how many pages, one full page. You try read it. That is why I'm breaking it down for you, because it's not so easy to read. Because when I say not easy to read, that's because it is just pure words. One full page. Well, we don't have no time to read that. So we've been through it. He says, opportunities for leadership are offered to our students, but leadership positions are a privilege and honor bestowed by the institution on the basis of certain criteria, of which religious affiliation is not one. So my thing, this very point should have protected Jade Basco from being stripped of her head girl title in the first place, Mr. Lord Bishop. This very point should have protected her. Opportunities for leadership are offered to our students, but leadership positions are a privilege and honor bestowed by the institution on the basis of certain criteria, of which religious affiliation is not one of them. How come this did not protect Jade Basco? How come? He goes on to say, while the remit of the Office of the Public Defender allows for intervention in such matters, he says, we believe the matter more appropriately resides with the Office of a Children's Advocate. Well, I said that from day one. That's what I said at the very beginning. I'm happy that the public defender got involved, and I thought the public defender should have gotten involved, but that it really should have been led by the children's advocate. So we are also agreeing with him to an extent on that point. The absence of a children's advocate was alarming. The absence of the Minister of Youth was alarming. You see, there are places, where ministries and responsibilities overlap, and I think the thinking that twinned the Minister of Education and Youth in Jamaica was not a bad thinking. It might have been a good thinking. Now it has been separated, and it's two big ministries, but they overlap at many different crossroads. Twin the ministries and put people inside of both of them who can manage. So the question we're asking, shouldn't the board have met and deliberate before the student was stripped of her title? You're talking about the children's advocate, but shouldn't there be some kind of a meeting between the principal, the board, and those who were involved? Shouldn't they have met before you strip her of her title? The public defenders asked that there be a wider investigation of religious discriminations at schools generally. And I think at St. Hilda's in particular, and Christian schools in particular, we have to begin to look at some of the rules that even govern graduation, for example. We don't have the details on this, but what are some of the issues that can arise to prevent you from graduating as a student at, say, St. Hilda's or any other school that identifies itself as a Christian school? And are any of these issues contingent on religious affiliation? For example, if you're a Seventh-day Adventist and attend an Anglican school and you can't make it to an event on a Saturday that is considered an event that will go towards whether or not you graduate, which I understand might be happening at some schools, and we're not saying it is St. Hilda's, whether it is your Evening of Excellence, whether it is your concert, whether it is you're buying a ticket to go see Father Richard Ho Long, because a lot of these, there are a lot of stupidness happening in schools in Jamaica, and especially schools that call themselves Christian schools, because they tie graduation to a lot of can we say partisan religions? Because we're not going to say religious denomination. Partisan religion, where if you're seventh day and you can't make it on a Saturday, it might affect whether or not you graduate. If you can't purchase Father Richard Ho Long ticket, it might affect some points or the other. This is what we're hearing. Is it true? Is it not true? I don't know, but we're going to check into them anyway. So, hymnals that you sing at school, because you said the school is a Christian school, so the hymnals that you use in the school and the songs that people must sing, it's another thing. What if you're a Pan-African and you do not sing Amazing Grace or Sweet the Sound That Save a Wretch Like Me, and it's in your school hymnal? That's another thing. That's another thing. And we're laughing now, but there are a lot of questions to be asked and lots to be dealt with, even though we have gone to the point now where it seems as if this issue has been resolved. This was a flare-up. It was a symptom of a greater problem in our schools in Jamaica, where there, even in when you go to the guidance councils, and this is a conversation we have had many times here on IRF, especially when I used to do Sex-Wise, about guidance counseling and religious discrimination, because you go in as a young child and you're asking questions about condoms, about sex and so on, but the religion of the guidance counselor prevents him or her from giving the kind of advice that should be given. And this is something that parents must know. This is something that must be dealt with by the Ministry of Education. And it is not just in our schools. Our government and social institutions are headed up by bigots who have their own ideas about what people should dress like, what they should look like. So when they come to access services, they are judged and discriminated against at many different levels because of religion. That is what continues to divide us, to tear us apart here in Jamaica. It is at the heart. It is at the heart of some of the issues that we now face as a nation. And unless we take them out, put them down, expose them, and tear them apart one by one and begin to rebuild, behavior change doesn't happen overnight. We understand that. Behavior change doesn't happen overnight. That we understand. But we must start somewhere. If it's at the school level and in the social institutions, then let us do that. It's what now? How many days now? 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 20. It's almost 30 days now. It's almost 30 days since Mr. Franklin Johnson made egregious statements regarding Africans and African descendants in Jamaica. And he is one of the main advisors to the Minister of Education. We are going to hell really fast. We are going nowhere, really, really fast, really, really fast. And there's another problem that we have. Political affiliation makes idiots out of academics, out of resource persons, out of economists, out of political scientists. Political affiliation, partisan politics in Jamaica is doing a number on us, because people who attack the education system from many different levels, even to the point that you hear a person stand up and say, but it's a miseducation. They will not turn their attention to the advisor of the Minister of Education, who is an advisor who is part of that miseducation process. You see the problem that we have? You see the problem that we have? We have a problem in Jamaica we've got a very, very serious problem. We are not who we say we are. We are what we do. And if it is a principle that make us write to the Prime Minister an open letter to the Prime Minister of Britain, to David Cameron, if it's a principle, Mr. P.J. Patterson, that made you write to David Cameron, that made you say what you said in that open letter, then if it is a principle upon which you stand, you must also ask for Mr. Franklin Johnston to step down. It follows naturally. You must also write an open letter to him, or you must also demand that he steps down. We're going to go through P.J. Patterson's letter, in a hopefully next week, if not the week after, inshallah, to ensure that you get an idea of what we're talking about. That the very same insult that Mr. David Cameron unleashed on the people of Jamaica, that Mr. Franklin Johnston, in his official capacity, because it is identified in the article as an advisor to the Minister of Education, unleashed on the people of Jamaica. In his private capacity, like Mr. Champagne, we don't care much what Mr. Champagne saying, writing a letter to the Gleaner, that's for him business. I mean, him not advising no Prime Minister as far as we know, or no Minister of Education. So he can say what he wants to say. That is the attorney me talking. No, Mr. Franklin Johnston can also say what he wants to say. So to Mr. Dingwall and the rest, and Mr. Martin Henry and so on. Why Mr. Franklin Johnston is different is that he's an advisor to the Minister of Education. And so, Mr. P.J. Patterson, even as Portia Simpson-Miller rolls out the team to not obey today, being afraid to go to Port Antonio because people are discontent, that even as that happens, you too have a responsibility. And all those who have written open letters to David Cameron about his insult to Jamaica have a responsibility to say to the Minister of Education, the insult from David Cameron has also come from one of your chief advisors, Mr. Franklin Johnston, if it is principle that we're standing up on and not partisan politics. One of the things we want to know is whether or not we are building a country, or are we building a hut? Because if it is a hut we are building, we can continue. But if it's a country, if this is supposed to be nation building, then we have to think again and multitask, even while we call for resignations.
And as we fight one another for the power and the glory, Jah kingdom goes west. We the people want to know just where we're going. Right now we hands are tied behind the backs, while certain people if I'm butting. Where do we stand? We have too far to go, not to really know just how we're getting there. And if we're getting anywhere, we have too much to change, not to know the range of possibility and changeability. Violence and crime is commonplace within these said times. No man walk free. Prophecy come closer to fulfillment in these dread times. Why should this be? And as we fight one another with the power and the glory, the kingdom goes to waste, and every drop of blood we taste. I feel we own this race, yeah. I feel we own this race. Can't build no foundation for a if and a but. nation, or are we building a hut? And every time you ask for some old friend, you hear say just last night he meet a sad end. And if you talk too loud, and if you walk too proud, watch where you lay your head. Borrow the dread, well red. Can't build no dreams, and a fuss and a fight. Me no care who I do it, just say that's no right. And as we fight one another, with the power and the glory, your kingdom goes to waste, and every drop of blood we taste. I feel we own this grace, yeah. I feel we own this grace. Can't build no dream on a fuss and a fight. We don't care.
And we haven't dealt with the senators yet. We haven't dealt with the senators yet. I hope we get a chance in terms of time to talk about that farce on both sides. Egos wrapped up in black skins, behaving like vulgar imbeciles, and doing it on our time and with our money. Gonna get there.
We are saying that those organizations which are politically on the front lines fighting for our people should come together and form a united front. This united front is a very simple thing now, a very simple task. All it means is that we come together and have common meetings. And if we hear one attacking the other newspaper, we don't respond to the newspaper, we telephone each other and ask them. And if we hear one attacking the other newspaper, we don't respond to the newspaper, we telephone each other and ask them. And if we hear one attacking the other newspaper, we don't respond to the newspaper, we telephone each other and ask them. And if we hear one attacking the other newspaper, we don't respond to the newspaper, we telephone each other and ask them. Telephone each other.
You are young. They fear you because you are the future. How fearful they must be that they shoot you, children. How powerful you must be that they fear you so much. You are powerful because you are the generation that will be free. The violence, the beatings, the torture, the killings, all this is the back pain of our free nation. Please, God, may I live to see it. But if I don't, I see it now on your faces, like the light of the rising sun, and my heart leaps within me as if I too was young again. And I know, oh yes, I know, freedom is coming tomorrow.
Black power! 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 Black power!
because you are young. They fear you because you are the future. How fearful they must be that they shoot you, children. How powerful you must be that they fear you so much.
Also, a note from @UncleMilty on Twitter. He says, Jamaica opened an exhibition on Morant Bay Rebellion yesterday at the IOJ East Street. It's a National Museum, I think you're saying. Yeah, Jamaica opened an exhibition on Morant Bay and the Morant Bay Rebellion yesterday at IOJ in East Street. We say the Morant Bay War now. And Uncle Milty, who, remember, that you only have like 120 characters. So look at it, you could say Morant Bay War instead of Morant Bay Rebellion, just saying. Less characters. We have been telling you since 2011, and we have intensified the interviews on this particular topic since 2014, asking the question, are we heading towards a post-antibiotic era? And the World Health Organization has been warning that we are sliding into a post-antibiotic era in which common illnesses like pneumonia will once again become feared killers, and surgery will come with heightened infection risks. We have been talking about that here. In January of this year, we spoke to microbiologist, and she was in the studio with us, Dr. Alison Nicholson. And with the regrettable deaths of 19 babies and recent MRSA outbreak, the question we're asking, should we be taking the warning of post-antibiotic era more urgently? Because some of the questions we asked of Dr. Nicholson back in January are relevant even today, and more so today. We listened to that question and answer session in Parliament recently, where the opposition members in particular were asking Dr. Fenton Ferguson about the dead babies at the 2 or 3 hospitals here in Jamaica. And one of the questions asked by Daryl Vaz is, can you say if MRSA is here? Most people say MRSA. That is an antibiotic resistant infection, and we heard in the interview from Dr. Nicholson then that it was already here in January. Now, we're not making any claims on anything. Basically what we're saying, how prepared are we, even as we talk about this specific issue, how prepared are we going into this post-antibiotic era, and what does it mean for us as a nation, considering the foothold that the IMF has on us, the chains of enslavement that the IMF continues to hold on us. So we have those to think about and talk about.
You are young. They fear you because you are the future. How fearful they must be that they shoot you, children. How powerful you must be that they fear you so much. You are powerful because you are the generation that will be free. The violence, the beatings, the torture, the killings, all this is the bad pain of our free nation. Please, God, may I live to see it. But if I don't, I see it now on your faces, like the light of the rising sun, and my heart leaps within me as if I too was young again. And I know, oh yes, I know, freedom is coming tomorrow. Amanda! Amanda! Maibuye! The Africa! May our children rest in peace. Ashes to ashes. Dust to dust.
freedom is coming tomorrow. Sarafina. All right, you're inside of the Africa Forum. It is Running African. And my sister Makaba is still with me. Just before we go into the news, want to have look further now, Sister Makaba. Thank you for sitting through the entire program. We're very, very happy to have you with us. And it's better this way, actually, believe me. But let us talk about your recent trip to the Congo.
Okay.
What made you go there in the first place?
Well, I was actually I actually planned to go to meet with other Makessa, and just do some teachings. But when I actually got there, Bakulu had another plan for me. So Bakulu, the ancestors, and I was doing other things. So
I like that. We must learn that word.
Yeah,
Bakulu, meaning the ancestors.
Yeah.
Let us say Bakulu, please. I hope I remember to say that. Yes, Bakulu. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, so
you found yourself doing other things. You went there for one thing, but you...
Yes, as usual, I was doing other things. So what had happened is that the political arm of BDK, which is called Bundu Dia Mayala, the government had banned them. And while I was there, that ban, I don't know if it's while I was there, it was just before I went there, the ban had been lifted. So they were organizing a lot of meetings going through the central region to speak with the people and just to celebrate, really. And they were also celebrating one Mbuta who was part of Abako. Abako is the Alliance of Bakongo. I would like to talk about that at some other point. So they were doing that celebration for him to be pardoned for some things he was accused of that didn't happen. But it was quite an amazing thing that was happening, the support for BDM, and the streets were lined with people, and people were holding up palm branches everywhere to welcome the party, and I just got to tour with the...
I am very happy to hear that, actually, because talking about politics in Africa and what has been happening, especially in the Congo, and that the ban was lifted on the BDK, this to me is really pretty good news.
Good morning. I am Natalie Campbell with the local and international headlines. Police believe they may have found the gun used in the killing of a teenager on Friday. Dead is 16-year-old Shade Allen. According to the CCU, Allen was reportedly shot in the abdomen while playing with a firearm with another student about 11 a.m. on Friday. The shooting occurred in Rosedown, Kingston 12. A report from the CCU says the firearm, a .38 Smith & Wesson revolver, with the serial number erased, was seized during an operation on Bethune Avenue in the community about 8:30 p.m. Friday. Detectives from the Denhamtown police suspect that the weapon may be the one that was used in the killing of 16-year-old and are continuing to follow several leads. A tour bus operator accused of murder had his bail extended when he appeared before the Sandan Circuit Court on Friday. Kevin Peterkin is charged with the murder of his 22-year-old common-law wife, massage therapist Sasha Edwards of Milford Road in Ochirea, Sandan. When Peterkin appeared in court, his legal representation was settled as he was assigned an attorney through legal aid. He's now being represented by Robert Brown. A mentioned date of Thursday, November 5 was set for the prosecution and defense to agree on a trial date in the next sitting of the Circuit Court, scheduled for January next year. Peterkin had his bail extended by Justice Lloyd Hibbert. Reports are that Edwards was stabbed to death reportedly during a domestic dispute at her home on June 22, 2011. The People's National Party, PNP, will host its second road tour public meeting in Onoto Bay, St. Mary this evening. Prime Minister and party leader Portia Simpson-Miller will address party supporters at the meeting. Other speakers include members of parliament, caretaker candidates, regional chairmen, PNP-YO representatives and other party officials from the region. The meeting is scheduled to begin at 5 p.m. Meanwhile, the Jamaica Labour Party will host a mass rally in Maypen, Clarendon this evening. Opposition leader Andrew Holness, spokesman on Finance Audley Shaw, and members of parliament including Mike Henry and Pernell Charles will address the function scheduled to begin at 6 p.m. 4-H clubs across the world are celebrating Global 4-H Day today. Chairman of the Jamaica 4-H clubs, Norman Grant, says the decision to observe Global 4-H Day came out of a consultative meeting during a 4-H summit held in South Korea last week. He says during those meetings, Jamaica was chosen as the second chair of the Global 4-H movement. Senator Grant says the summit sought to engage the over 7 million 4-H members worldwide to intensify the 4-H movement for a better future for the global community. In news overseas, searchers say they believe they have found the wreckage of a cargo ship which went missing off the Bahamas during Hurricane Joaquin last month. The 790-foot El Faro disappeared while sailing from Florida to Puerto Rico with 33 crew on board. A U.S. Navy ship using sonar equipment has now located a vessel at a depth of 15,000 feet. The El Faro sent out a distress signal on October 1, saying it had lost power and was taking on water. Debris was spotted in the ocean in the days after it disappeared, and one body was recovered. In a statement, the U.S. National Transportation Safety Board said a remotely operated vehicle would be deployed to survey and confirm the identity of the wreckage. It added that the wreckage was consistent with a 790-foot cargo ship, which from sonar images appears to be in an upright position and in one piece. The statement added that if the wreckage was confirmed to be the missing cargo ship, attempts would be made to locate and recover the voyage data recorder. Finally, teams investigating the fate of a Russian airliner which crashed in Egypt's Sinai Peninsula yesterday, killing all 224 on board, have widened their search for bodies and debris. So far, 163 bodies have been found, but the search area was extended to 9 miles after some were located away from the main wreck of the Airbus 321. Russia is observing a day of mourning after its worst air disaster. Egypt and Russia dismissed IS claims that its militants were responsible.
This is the same boat bigging up Cabo.
You play that one.
This is the same boat bigging up African Forum, running African. Yes.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Usain Bolt, sir. All right, let's go to the phone lines where Bert Samuels, Pan-African playwright and lawyer, attorney at law, is standing by, and we just came back from a successful staging of the dramaturgy, the trial of Governor Eyre, and the playwright, Pan-African playwright and attorney, is Bert Samuels. Lots of questions coming out of that, lots of accolades, and boy, have we been getting some really good response, humbling responses coming from across the world on this. Mr. Bert Samuels, good morning, sir.
Good morning, Sister Kaboo.
How you doing? How you doing?
I'm very good.
Yes, well, congratulations on a successful play that was written in one sitting from a serious place of inspiration. I'm just going to say it for you.
Yeah, it wasn't written, it was spoken.
Yes, really brilliant. Bert, after this, after the staging, lots of questions coming from around the world, actually, in terms of what next and where do we go from here with this. We have those questions to answer, and I really wanted to talk to you first before we go into an extended post-dramaturgy discussion, especially because of some of these questions that have arisen. So let us start with how it actually started with the proclamation. I'm calling it a proclamation, but the setting the groundwork that this used to be the Queen's Court, but this is a revolutionary court.
Yes.
Why was it important to do that, and what exactly was done in terms of just tweaking things a bit for understanding?
Well, remember, what this is about is we did what ought to have been done but was not done. A crime was committed, and Governor Eyre ought to have stood trial for the hundreds of deaths. So we decided to revise history, as it were, and make it explain what should have been done. And therefore, in the same month of October, when the slaughter was over, brothers and sisters, Governor Eyre was leaving on a ship, and we captured him. The survivors captured him, put him in jail, and declared a revolutionary government. And that is why it is an African-Jamaican judge who tried him. In those days, there have been no African Jamaican lawyers or judges. We were not allowed to be educated. So this revolutionary government envisages the coming to power and taking over the judiciary by a court of the people, by the people. And therefore, Governor Eyre stood trial in late October, and that's how we staged his trial. And that's why at the opening, you heard the judge, followed by a drummer saying, Governor Eyre, this is a revolutionary court. That's how the whole thing started.
Yes.
And I know that it was such a great setting, and that portion was given by Michael Holgate. He came within the spirits that guided me and, give that great introduction, as it were, to set the stage.
Right, and it was important to do that because obviously while we're saying go back to 1865 and majority of this and the vast majority of this of the script, the play itself was based on historical and legal fact.
That's correct.
But then it had to be done within the context of a revolutionary court because of the action that was being carried out anyway.
Of course. So because the peasants had to become jurors, the people were now qualified to be jurors. We had to, as it were, change the law 2 weeks before his trial, and we abolished the system where you had to own land to vote. You had to own land to be a juror. Any adult could now be a juror under this revolutionary government.
Right.
So having made those changes, we then put in place all the other laws remain the same.
and it was important, and I must say, and this is one of the reasons why I really have some serious respect for you after this thing, and I respected you a long time, but it as I'm saying now, it turned up because
I was your little brother. Now I'm your big brother.
No, you're my big brother. You're totally my big brother now because I sat in the court and I heard when the defense lawyer objected to the jury that not one of them owned one piece of land, and the judge's response was, but haven't you heard, the new law that came into effect 2 weeks ago? And I said, well, this is some serious thinking on the part of the playwright, because that's an objection that would have been made in 1865. As a matter of fact, they couldn't come in. They couldn't even come in, really.
Governor Eyre's lawyer says, does it mean that any Tom, Dick, or Harry can try my client, the governor?
Yes. and it was so realistic. We must say kudos to the actors, the actresses too. We'll talk about that in a little while. But another thing, Bert, is the lawyer himself, the defense lawyer you just talked about, because the questions have been raised too, again, that, skin shade, so you have a black lawyer representing Governor Eyre, and was that realistic?
Governor Eyre made a very smart move. He could have chosen an English lawyer, a white Jamaican lawyer, but he heard of the change that it was going to be black people on the jury. And therefore, he made a calculated decision to use a black lawyer. That he was putting his best foot forward. And that is why he chose an African Jamaican lawyer. Wouldn't you do that if you were Governor Eyre? You can't imagine that, but it was a smart move.
Yeah, we saw a similar move. Don't know if I'm talking out of turn on Buju Banton's part. When he went into that system in America, it was a wrong choice for him, obviously. But we can understand the thinking that if you're going to be tried by that system, then you needed a defense lawyer who was very conversant with that system.
He was hoping that the black lawyer would be able to convince the black jurors.
Right.
But apparently it didn't work, The evidence was overwhelming against him.
Right. I know you don't have anything to do with the jury, so we'll talk about the jury another day, but I was very impressed when I saw Nana Erna Brodba coming in as a juror, but we'll talk about the jury another day. In terms of the jury, though, the charge to the jury by His Lordship, I want to look at that. Some of the questions raised in that, and one of the main ones is, why didn't he say death? Well, at the end of the day, not the charge to the jury, but the what you call it when the judge say you're guilty, when the jury say you're guilty, and the sentencing. Right. When at the point of sentencing, the judge said that you'll die in a manner as prescribed by law. Talk to us about why it was coached in that way, and if there is another way that this could have been done.
Fine. Well, under Jamaican law and English law, when they used to carry out hanging, they have stopped it. The judge under the Offences Against the Persons Act, Section 3, says that law says that if a person is found guilty of capital murder, that is, if he's going to be punished with death, there is a prescribed set of words that the judge must use. Mm-hmm. And those were the very words that the judge used in Governor Eyre's trial. Mm-hmm. It is that, stand Governor Eyre, you have been found guilty by this juror. The sentence of this court is that you shall suffer death in a manner prescribed by law.
Mm-hmm. Take him away.
That is the word. The law says that has to be said. And that was said and duplicated in this trial. These were words, invented by the English Parliament and exported to Jamaica. So he got a taste of the English imposition of that sentence.
So that in terms of a sentencing, legally, this is how it would be. It would be said, not that you'll die by your throat, you'll be hung by the neck until you die.
No, not by your neck. No, it is. You shall suffer death in a manner prescribed by law. The reason for that is the Parliament, let it open to Parliament that you can get an injection, you can be hanged, you can be electrocuted. Mm-hmm. So that it just says any means of death prescribed by law, that's the one you will suffer from. At that time, it would have been the rope.
Yes.
And it still is the rope in Jamaica.
Oh, it is?
Yes, it is.
It's on the books? It's legally on the books that way?
Yes.
Let me just ask.
The gallows uses a rope and a trap door. I've seen it already.
That's a sight. All right, so let us look at the witnesses and who they were. Once again, brilliant acting from all of those witnesses. I found myself crying with Hillary Nicholson, Paul Bogle's mother. I saw people tearing up with George William Gordon's wife. I mean, people in a high society. And then and Governor Eyre himself, Bob Kerr, really did wow. I mean, I nearly lick him knocking on come right behind me.
He fell apart. And I tell you, Cabo, he was so correct when, for example, he was going to give evidence and walk into the witness box.
Yes.
And African Jamaican police touched him and he pushed him off. Right. That was to show the racism that was in Eyre's blood. Yes. How you as a black man wish to touch me, a white governor. Yes. That's what he was portraying. And he did that very well.
He did that very well. I mean, he did that too well, Mr. Bob Town.
Yes. He was so proud, when he gave his address. He made sure the jurors and all of us know that he wasn't born here. He was born in the county of Yorkshire in England.
Yes.
So, he had this nationalistic pride which we should have about Africa. Yes. He had it about England.
And the one person who was more or less an eyewitness was in GP, came into court, and one of the questions being raised by so many who have seen this the live stream of this and watching the YouTube channel now is that so and you've raised it too, may I just say, in this space, so that what happens now after this, there's so much left hanging in terms of what can, I mean it literally, in terms of, no pun intended, in terms of what can be done. You have said, for example, that an appeal need to be mounted for Talawa.
Yes. Remember Talawa, your listeners may know if they watch it, that Talawa came to give evidence because all the other witnesses were not able to be in the trials because, no one is allowed in the trials. It was not a public trial. It was court-martialed. It was behind closed doors. William Gordon's wife couldn't go in. No attorneys were there for the persons who were executed. Now, Talawa is in a unique position in that, in the play because she was the one who went to trial and got 15 years imprisonment. So she came now to tell us how unfair the procedure was. And that was her contribution. She came in handcuffs. She had to leave to go back to General Penitentiary. And she was the only witness who was an eyewitness to the trial itself. We had eyewitnesses to the executions. but she gave the valuable contribution of what happened behind closed doors with those, hand-picked Governor Eyre soldiers who tried us.
And so that in terms of where we go from here with the dramaturgy, you've got you've got other scripts to write, eh, Mr. Gonzalez?
Why don't you talk about what I'm going to do with this work? This work should go to every capital.
Yes.
The Minister of Justice was kind to give us the courtroom on a Sunday. It is my view that it is approach for us to carry it island-wide in every capital, because there is a court in every capital.
And Bert, there was a concern too, and I'm going to go back to where you're going, but there was a concern too, and we heard Professor Caroline Cooper mention it on one of the interviews, that the space in terms of a courthouse was so small, and that we had an issue of lack of access for some. I think the thing that she didn't recognize while she was saying that is that people who came early could actually go and select their seats, so it wasn't done by who you are. I know she said she was letting because people recognize her, but that I suppose was what it was. But it was important to get a court, and especially a court in Morant Bay. How could we have dealt with it differently in terms of access?
I don't quite get you, Kabu.
I think not you, just the general production. I think I heard her saying on one of the interviews and listening back to the tapes that we were in danger of making the same mistakes that others have made in terms of lack of access for the ordinary people to watch the trial, because the courtroom could only hold so much people and no more.
Yes.
Right, so even though
there's always been a restriction on the space in Jamaican courtrooms, but because our priority was to bring it for closure for the people of St. Thomas. And that courtroom is the same size of most courtrooms. There's nothing too small about it. It's going to be that size in any courtroom you go in Jamaica. It's a kind of snobbery that there are about 6 benches for the public. And, by the Constitution of Jamaica, trials must be held in public unless it's a sexual offense or a gun court matter. So that it exposes the whole thing, that there's little space for the public to witness whether justice is being dispensed. So we had to work within that system. So what this trial has done is to show the inadequacy of the justice system, that the courtroom should be designed for more people to be able to come in.
Yes.
But you had the innovation, we had TVs outside.
Television screens outside. The point you're making is that now the plan is to take this dramaturgy to every parish capital in Jamaica. That sounds good. Tell us about that.
We have decided in the National Commission Reparation led by Prof. Shepherd that it would be very good. The attention that has been paid to it, we know that we could take it possibly to every county. So we could do one in the Middle Island in Mandeville, and then we could take it down to Montego Bay so that those people can see it. Because, every part of the island had its own struggle. We know that Sam Sharp is down in St. James, and therefore that same kind of mistreatment of the people, although it wasn't confined to St. Thomas and Paul Bogle, everybody had a taste of the cruelty of colonialism. And therefore, there should be public attention using the Bogle experience throughout the island. And we're looking forward to that. Added to that, the university, the Creative Arts Center is definitely going to put it on in February and March. Holgate, Michael could tell you more about that.
Right, and we're going to do this, the post program. I really do hope that we'll get some time to do this.
But Cabo, you have put it all over the world. It's on YouTube. Thanks to you, IFM.
But a few more questions before you go. Have we set a kind of a precedent now then? And how are we now to view the Coral Gardens issue much later? But also you mentioned Sam Sharp earlier. Tacky.
You guys have been pushing me. I mean, the inspiration I got for this, dramatization, you better hope that it comes for the others. As I've told Holgate and Prof. Shepherd, I've been walking with Bogle for about 50 years now. I've been walking in his spirit and his shadow. I need now to take on Sam Sharp to get that inspiration. It doesn't come easily, but when it comes, it flows. And I stood on my feet and spoke without any script, straight for 3.5 hours, because I felt the Bogle I felt the people's struggle in St. Thomas. All I need now is to capture that spirit of Sam Sharp. So let us, let the ancestors come, and I will welcome them to take on Sam Sharp. And I've been doing some readings about him.
Yes.
And it will come, I think.
And bringing it closer home now, take off your playwright hat now and put on your legal hat. There are some outstanding issues that we have not dealt with. For example, Coral Gardens is one.
Right.
By the same token of Governor Eyre, and we're looking at the charge to the jury. This is a criminal trial. Governor Eyre is presumed innocent. You cannot find him guilty because of any pre-trial publicity. You must not pay attention to that. You cannot say because so-and-so, okay, the part that says, looking at the death, no, hold on. I'm looking at the part where he says that if you find that he's responsible, then you must indict. All right, but you know the part that I'm saying there, right? I'll find it shortly because I'm looking at the summing up. All right, so that in mind, do we, by the very same token, by the very same charge, look at the guilt, legally speaking, of Bustamante and those who were involved in the Coral Gardens massacre? And do we, by that very same token, hold, say, a minister, Fenton Ferguson, responsible for the death of those 8 babies? In other words, is there a precedent that is being that is set here?
Yes, I think, Kabu, as you'd appreciate, this couldn't have been done close to the time because colonialism was around. If I tried to stage this a couple of years after the Morant Bay Rebellion, I'd have been locked up for inciting the people to violence. So sometimes with the passage of time we can revisit these things. I think to revisit Coral Gardens now is very important because one of the problems with Coral Gardens is that we have made a hero of the person who was presiding over the state at the time, who was responsible for the, in no uncertain terms, giving the police the power to brutalize Rastafari. So how do we reconcile that? A man has been made a national hero when he's responsible for those crimes in terms of being the premier at the time. So that's very interesting.
Yes, I think that we have to, I was talking about principles this morning, and whatever principle we stand on in terms of a trial of Governor Eyre. I mean, we can't, I don't see that there can't be principles if we're going to throw them through the window for other similar cases, maybe not as gory, maybe not as intense, but really, I mean, massacre is just the same.
It's very terrible. And don't forget, Kabu, that it is not until about, say, 15 years ago, and interestingly, I was one who presented that case, that Rastafari was not trimmed upon entering into a penal institution. Once you got a sentence in a Jamaican court and you were Rastafari, you would be trimmed the first day of your sentence. So those atrocities against Rastafari were not just during Coral Gardens. The judiciary and the judicial system and the law created these atrocities against Rastafari. And as I said, it was about 15, 20 years ago, I did a case which stopped the trimming of Rastafari in Jamaica. So we have a lot to account for. And there's a lot that in my own experience as a lawyer I could put into drama, which would be historically correct.
And I'm looking at the charge I was trying to find just now. The judge charging the jury, you cannot say because so many persons have died, someone must pay for it, and the person at the helm must be the one responsible. You have to firstly find that the declaration of court-martial was unwarranted because it is a power of the governor to declare a court-martial. We know we know what Bustamante declared at Coral Gardens, kill them and who can hold on the prison, the morgue will hold them, etc. Now, on that statement, which we have had so many testimonies on, and I'm quite sure we can that can be dragged into court and tried, and then we have to debadge and detitle Bustamante as a national hero.
Yeah, you see, that will call for trial. I mean, that will be part of any serious trial, whether a person with that antecedent ought to have become the way we have made him a hero. So, to revisit that, I know you're on very, very sensitive ground, and I'm speaking on sensitive ground now, but as you say, we can't be aiming at one set of atrocity and putting the carpet over another set of atrocities. And those are within the living memories of persons. No, those victims of Coral Gardens are still alive.
Yes.
So they can come forward. The Marmor persons who suffered on the Marmor came and testified. So those survivors of the Coral Garden, we would look to see whether they could come forward with a case. So that's an area that this has now, as you said, this trial has brought in sharp focus many other atrocities. So I'm challenging the system and challenging attorneys who know about this, that we could start to look at this another way.
Of course we could. And we're going to leave it right there, Mr. Bert Samuels, my big brother.
Thank you, Harriet Sam. Without you, without the actors and the actresses, without Michael, without Pop Shepherd, I would not be the recognized writer I'm now today.
Yeah, once again, we must, you know, you're going to win some award for this. We're predicting that. We know this. You'll definitely win. But this was brilliant. Good work. Good work to the team, the National Commission on Reparations, the director, Michael Halgate, and everyone. We wanted to start right here with the questions coming from the legal perspective, because many questions are out there in the public sphere.
And finally, Kabu, we are now writing our own history. We don't have others writing our history. And this is what
most definitely
that dramatization was about. Written by us.
For us. By us.
Thank
you very much. Thank you very much, Bert Samuels. All right. Pan-African playwright and attorney at law, Mr. Bert Samuels, just looking back to go forward. But the thing we want to talk about, and the question we're asking this morning is, now that we have this situation with the babies who have died, and once again our condolences and our hearts really do go out to the mothers and to the fathers of these children who have died, with the regrettable deaths of these 19 babies and recent MRSA outbreak. Should this be taken as a warning of a post-antibiotic era more urgently? And we want to move the discussion along, because it is something that the WHO has been warning about here in Jamaica. Funding has been made available through international organizations to trap this, to deal with this. So let me go. I really do have to do this. Let me go, even if to the first part of the interview, and we'll try and cover the other two parts later on, to this conversation I had with Alison Nicholson, microbiologist, in January of this year. We're joined in this segment of the program by consultant microbiologist Dr. Alison Nicholson. Told you earlier that we'll be focusing this morning on the question of antibiotic resistance and asking if we're in a post-antibiotic era. As a matter of fact, we have been focusing on this for a while, and one of the things we did last week was kind of to just give you a teaser about what the WHO has been saying. And the report from the WHO, we told you where to find that, the first global report on antibiotic resistance, revealing serious worldwide threat to public health. I'm very, very grateful to Dr. Alison Nicholson for coming in, taking the time out to come into the studio to help us to understand that this early in the morning. Dr. Nicholson, how are you doing?
I am fine, thank you.
Right, and I know it's a sacrifice, so thank you so much.
No problem, my pleasure.
All right, okay. So we've been talking a lot about this. Post-antibiotic era is a term that we have been using. What does that mean?
Well, this actually describes the time during which antibiotics will no longer be effective. Not everybody agrees that we're actually in the post-antibiotic era, but certainly many of the scientists on the cutting edge believe that we are, and if we are not actually there yet, we're very close.
What is the disagreement? You said not everybody agree.
Because you still have antibiotics that are effective. However, I remember Arjun Srinivasan from the CDC actually went on record as saying that we are now in the post-antibiotic era, while a colleague of his, David Livermore, top antibiotic expert from the UK, thinks that we have probably a few more years. But what he's referring to is the crisis that we face, where antibiotics may no longer be able to cure, to treat simple infections that we have long mastered.
All right, this is, and I remember asking you this on the phone, because for me, so I've been reading this, I've been talking about it, and I said to myself, I don't even know if I understand what I'm talking about, what I'm saying. How serious is this? What is it that we need to understand?
It's very serious. For example, in World War II, you would have a lot of simple infections killing persons during that period of time. People who had wounds. These wounds would be infected by common bacteria like Staphylococcus, Streptococcus. Don't worry about the names. The fact is they would cause common skin wound infections. And then the introduction of penicillin into medicine at the time actually cured these infections. And then from that, we've had so many new antibiotics being developed. So we actually felt that we had mastery over a lot of the bacterial infections. But the bacteria have come back at us, and they have become resistant to a lot of the antibiotics that have been developed. So now we're back almost to the pre-antibiotic era, where we have simple infections that we can't treat because we have no antibiotics available. That's a broad sweeping statement, but that is general. That is the cause of the panic that we feel.
That's the thing, because I'm trying not to feel panic.
Maybe you should.
No, you see, that's the thing. It's a very weird situation for me, and I know that I spoke to you on the phone, and you said that to me, that this is a pretty serious situation. We always say, when we're talking about health issues, we don't want to create panic, we don't want to cause a crisis, etc., etc. But you're saying to us that in this particular case, there is need for...
There is need to be concerned about it, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as the concern drives us to action, then that is the good thing, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and I'm sure you'll ask me some of that later on.
Most definitely. You mentioned the World War era, and a lot of us have seen so many of the movies, and have been very conscious of. We know that when somebody gets a shot, when you get wounded in those situations, that you're likely going to lose a foot, you're going to die, and so on, because obviously there's no medication to treat that. Now you're saying that this is most of the common antibiotics that have been developed over time to deal with these with wounds, with infections, and so on.
Right.
That human beings are developing and have developed resistance.
Well, it's actually the bacteria that have developed resistance.
The bacteria.
So you will take the same antibiotic that was used probably 5 years ago for the same condition, but this time it won't treat the condition because the microbes have jumped ahead of us and have become resistant to the antibiotics.
How do antibiotics work?
Okay, antibiotics, that's a broad question. That's a big question. Antibiotics have several mechanisms of working, but the main thing is to find a target in the bacteria that the human being doesn't have, so that when you take the antibiotic, it kills the bacteria without affecting the human being very much. Mm-hmm. So you exploit the differences between the bacterium and the human. So for example, bacteria have cell walls. The human cell doesn't have a cell wall. So if you develop an agent that will actually prevent cell wall synthesis or disrupt it in some way, then you will kill the bacterium and the human being will be okay. And there are other methods, interfering with protein synthesis, which is essential for them, interfering with the nucleic acid synthesis, different things like that you exploit.
Mm-hmm. What are some of the common diseases or infections that are treated with antibiotics? You mentioned some of them just now, but I know that even in the report that there are many others.
Right. So let's start with things like pneumonia. Pneumonia is something that everybody is familiar with. Now, your common bacterial causes of pneumonia are easily treated by antibiotics. And we are having problems in that area where some of the bacteria that are implicated in pneumonia have become resistant to the commonly used antibiotics. You still have some antibiotics that can work, but we're running out of options, if you understand. And then you have...
So it's like we're going back to the consumption days.
Right. So you have pneumonia, then you can go to something milder like a pharyngitis. That's a sore throat. No, not all sore throats are caused by bacteria, and that is a very important distinction to make. Yeah. As a matter of fact, most of the sore throats we have would be caused by viruses, and a very, very important point is that viruses cannot be treated by antibiotics. Urinary tract infection. So that is commonly caused by your bacteria. And again, we used to be able to treat those very easily, but we're running out of options. Things like your sexually transmitted disease, example, gonorrhea. treated by antibiotics, and I hope you ask me some questions about that a little later.
Yes. Well, we can stop and ask the questions now, because one of the things that we did way back when we first heard about gonorrhea, it was on Sex-Wise that we actually were calling some, doctors to ask, what does this mean if your gonorrhea cannot be treated by antibiotics that we now have? What is the meaning of this for sexually transmitted infections and for public health?
Well, first, let me tell you that Neisseria gonorrhoeae, that's the name of the organism that causes gonorrhea, is actually appearing to win the dubious distinction of being the first organism to be ineradicable by antibiotics.
What does that mean?
Meaning that because of the problems we're now having with Neisseria gonorrhoeae, we're running out of options, and it will probably become the first bacterium that becomes untreatable by antibiotics, which is a serious problem. Right. So, for example, we had a number of options that we could use to treat gonorrhea. Now, the organism has become resistant to those antibiotics, so now we're left with probably one very reliable antibiotic, something called ceftriaxone. But there have been reports of increased tolerance of the organism to this antibiotic. It's not resistant to it yet, but it's becoming tolerant. It's becoming too comfortable in the presence of the antibiotic.
No, I probably asked you already, but how does this happen? Okay, so for each antibiotic that has been developed by the pharmaceutical company, it has a specific mechanism. So, for example, let me just go into this a little bit. So, for example, the antibiotic is one that disrupts cell wall. In order to do that, it has to target a particular receptor on the cell wall. So it's disrupting that particular receptor, creating its effect, and then killing the bacterium. So after a while, the bacterium, there's a change in the receptor. And so the same antibiotic goes in searching for the particular receptor that it's supposed to act on. It's no longer there. The bacterium is now using a different receptor. Mm-hmm. So it can't be killed. Wow. And gonorrhea in particular, which seems to be one of the vexing diseases, infections.
Yes.
You're saying that there's only one antibiotic now that is proving to be more or less helpful.
Okay, no. Let me clarify that. For example, in Jamaica, we the Neisseria gonorrhoeae isolates that we have are still sensitive to a wide range of antibiotics. What we're trying to highlight is that in other parts of the world, we're having isolates that have become resistant. Mm-hmm. Now, once you have the emergence of this kind of resistance, it can spread fairly easily, and it means that it's a warning that this will happen. Mm-hmm. So you try to take precautions in terms of your prescribing practices and so on.
All right, and you'd also mentioned before UTI, urinary tract infection, as one of the problem ones also. What is happening with that in Jamaica in terms of treatment?
Well, in Jamaica, we're still trying to do surveillance, and at University Hospital we monitor our organisms fairly closely, and some of the common organisms are showing resistance to some of the commonly used antibiotics. But in terms of being resistant to all antibiotics, we still have options left. But the point is, what is happening elsewhere is a warning signal for us to be careful.
And some of these words, I'm listening to them carefully that you're using in terms of warning signals and so on. What are the consequences? What are the dangers
of antibiotic resistance?
Of resistance, yes.
Okay, well, when you have antibiotic resistance, for example, you're in hospital or you're admitted to hospital with a particular infection. If it is that you have a pneumonia, then you might be treated with a regular antibiotic. But it's not going to work if it's caused by a resistant organism. It means, therefore, that there's increased risk, increased possibility that you might die, or the doctor might realize that this antibiotic, which normally works, is no longer working, and then has to change antibiotics. So you're looking at increased costs because you now have to go on more than one course of antibiotic. You'll be in hospital for a longer period of time because it takes longer to find the appropriate antibiotic to treat you. So that's increased hospitalization stay, increased costs, etc. Mm-hmm. Increased morbidity, takes longer to get better, and increased mortality. You might die from the infection.
Mm-hmm. Simple infection that would have been treated in a...
Right. Exactly.
Wow. Do we know what is it? What are the main reasons for this situation that we're now facing?
Yes, there has been an overuse of antibiotics, and while I think that perhaps the introduction of antibiotics into the practice of modern medicine is probably one of the greatest gifts that we have gotten from God, I believe now that we are in danger of having squandered that gift. So having overused it, we are now running out, because the more you expose the bacteria to the antibiotics, the more you select for some trait that they have that causes the organism to survive in the presence of the antibiotic, and then that trait takes over. You know, I like to animate it and say that the microbes skip ahead of us, but they're very simple creatures, so they're not thinking, but it's easy to animate it so persons can understand that the bacteria did learn your tricks, and so the more you expose them to your armamentarium, then they just find a way of getting around it.
Mm-hmm. What is our situation in Jamaica generally? Let me go there and then come back to this question.
Okay, well, I can speak to what I know, and there are many organisms that have shown increased resistance. In terms of some of the sweeping resistance mechanisms that are identified in other parts of the world, we have identified them in some of our microbes at University Hospital. So some of the more tricky resistance problems are here. For example, you may have heard about MRSA. CNN tends to carry stuff on MRSA. That's methicillin-resistant Staph aureus. Again, Staph aureus is a common garden organism. It's on our skin. It's all over. But when it develops resistance to the antibiotic, that's when it gives us a challenge. And that is here. It may not be as common in our hospitals as it is elsewhere. Well, it definitely is not as common in our hospitals as it is in, for example, the developed countries, because of the amount of antibiotics they use. But it is here, and it does pose a problem.
So that you're looking at this from your own perspective, as one of the lead investigators looking at this issue. Am I right? You're one of the lead investigators on this?
I'm one of the investigators.
All right. So do we know what's happening region by region? Because I hear you're making the comparison in the developed world, in other countries and so on. And which region would Jamaica be in? And how soon are we expecting? We're in 2015 now. You're saying that there's cause for concern. How soon are we expecting what's happening in the worst case scenario, if nothing is done?
Well, let's start from the back. Remember that the world is a global village. So it really doesn't take long for what's happening elsewhere to be here. So, for example, a patient who comes here from India or some other place where they might be having a particular, I mentioned India specifically because they have a particular problem with a certain type of resistance, and that has been recognized. Or you're coming from the USA with MRSA. You come here with MRSA, you can you take that organism with you. So when you have new mechanisms of resistance emerging that have been identified, it really doesn't take long for it to get somewhere else. And we actually had a case at the University Hospital where we had a patient coming in from another country who had a particular organism. And fortunately for us, we had isolated the patient because of the possible diagnosis. And so when we identified the organism from the patient's sample, we were happy to find out that the patient had already been isolated, so the organism did not get a chance to spread. But had we not isolated the patient because of the possible diagnosis, another completely unrelated diagnosis, then the possibility existed that the organism could have spread to vulnerable patients, because patients who are in hospital are vulnerable.
And we talked about the consequences before and the dangers. In terms of for public health, I know that's some of the questions I'm going over because I need to understand a bit more, and I'm quite sure our listeners too, in terms of the dangers to public health. To you talk about somebody coming in and that this could have spread if you hadn't isolated that situation. So the dangers include that you just talked about, but also what for public health generally, what are we dealing with?
Okay, well, a lot of these bacteria, let me just clarify that, many of the bacteria we talk about may not affect the person who is not ill. some of the organisms we mentioned will be more likely to affect persons who are immunocompromised. So there's something wrong with their ability to fight infection. So they're wide open. You tend to find those persons clustered in hospitals. So some of the organisms like the methicillin-resistant Staph aureus that I mentioned earlier, those would have greater implications for the patient who is lying in a hospital bed already ill, having lines and tubes and so on, providing transport for the organisms. So some of the organisms that we're talking about, especially bacterial agents, tend to have more implications for the persons whose immune systems are compromised. So that's the first thing we need to
know.
Yes.
What should
that helps to reduce the panic?
Yes, it does. What should we be doing, individuals? Let me start with the doctors first. The doctors first. Yeah.
Okay. Well, as the doctors need to be aware of this, and I'm sure they are aware of this problem, and as a result, modify antibiotic prescribing practices. So it's important to try to restrict the use of antibiotics to what you think are bacterial infections. Now, the problem here, or the challenge here for the doctor, is that there are some infections that you're not sure whether this is bacterial or viral. For example, a sore throat. Most times it's viral, but it could be bacterial. Some of your ear infections, etc. So the challenge is, what do you do when you have a patient in front of you that has an infection, similar symptoms, very similar, could be viral, could be bacterial. So the challenge is to spend a little bit more time using the diagnostic aids that you have to see if you can call it whether this is bacterial or viral. And if it's viral, as much as possible, well, not as much as possible. If you think it's viral, then do not use antibiotics, because antibiotics do not have any effect on viruses.
And so that the patient also now, the individual has a responsibility. Now, what should we do?
Right, that's very important. Many doctors will tell you that patient, and I myself was in private practice, patients will come in and request antibiotics. They will tell you that their neighbor got antibiotics, had the same thing, got antibiotics and felt better. They would even bring their neighbor's antibiotics to show you what their neighbor got, and therefore please prescribe this. So it would be good if the public would stop pressuring doctors for antibiotics. There are other things too. If you get a course of antibiotics, you need to complete it. Antibiotics, this is different from painkillers. You get painkillers and the pain is gone, you can stop. But for antibiotics, if you're given a course of antibiotics, enough antibiotics for 7 days, take it until the very last one is finished. For 10 days, same thing, 5 days.
Why is this important?
Because this has been worked out already. A lot of investigation went in to determine how many or how much antibiotics you would need to completely eradicate the organism. Now you can take antibiotics and you can actually begin to feel better. So that's what you call a clinical cure. But that does not mean that the bacteria have been eradicated. So you take the antibiotics, you feel better, you stop. The few remaining organisms have been exposed to the antibiotic, so they find a way of becoming resistant, and then they become your problem. Next thing you're now coming down with an infection with an organism that's resistant to the antibiotic that you got. So for your own sake, complete the antibiotics so that you can have complete bacterial eradication causing that particular infection, and you won't leave resistance behind you. Other things include things like storing the antibiotics. You know, they might tell you keep it in the refrigerator, or they might tell you, you can keep it on the counter. So follow the instructions. They might tell you take the antibiotics after food or take it on an empty stomach. All of these things have been carefully investigated so that you have maximal effect of the antibiotics that you're taking. So the public's compliance is also needed.
In this interview in January, Dr. Allison talked about MRSA, that it was here, and the concerns and so on. This question was raised in Parliament by Daryl Vaz. The answer was not forthcoming, but it was already known and discussed on air right here in January. And this is why I'm saying integrity is what should drive how people respond. Once again, regrettable deaths of these babies, but just to say that we also need to bear in mind that we also have another problem, which is this antibiotic resistance that we're hearing about, and how that might be impacting our own health system here in Jamaica. Serious days ahead, and these are critical times, crucial times. We need people who are willing to go above and beyond and to take responsibility to guide this process.
Speak truth to the people. To identify the enemy is to free the mind. Free the mind of the people. Speak to the mind of the people. Speak truth.
All right, we want to let you know that the 85th celebration of the crowning of His Majesty, the Emperor Haile Selassie I and Empress Menin, crowned in 1930, the Nyabingi, happening at the Nyabingi Center, Great Pond in Ocho Rios, from sunrise on November 2 to sunrise the following morning. So get ready for tomorrow, sunrise on November 2 until sunrise the following morning. There will be other celebrations in Bobber Hill and also in Montego Bay, but here in Ocho Rios at Pafai's Nyabingi Center, Great Pond, the 85th celebration of a crowning of His Imperial Majesty, the Emperor Haile Selassie I and Empress Menin, happening from sunrise November 2 to sunrise the following morning, happening right here at Redemption Ground. Also quickly, we are introducing new books to the Running African Book Club. The new titles, I'll tell you more about the books next week, but the new titles are Color for Color, Skin for Skin, Marching with the Ancestral Spirits into War at Morant Bay by Clinton Hutton. The Akan Diaspora in the Americas by Kwesi Konado. Thank you so much for this one, Kwame. So the Akan Diaspora in the Americas by Kwesi Konado. And also Dragon in the Caribbean, China's Global Redimensioning, Challenges and Opportunities for the Caribbean by Richard Bernal. So these three books we have introduced as the new titles in the Running African Book Club. We'll tell you more about them come next week, Sunday. Once again, Dragon in the Caribbean, China's Global Redimensioning, Challenges and Opportunities for the Caribbean by Richard Bernal, published by Ian Randall Publishers. Color for Color, Skin for Skin, Clinton A. Hutton, published also by Ian Randall. And the Akan Diaspora in the Americas by Kwesi Konado, published by the Oxford University Press. All right, we're going to wrap up this segment. Makamba, our sister, has been here with us all morning, and we're very happy to have had her. Makamba, as we wrap up, I know we've been asking questions, but I know that you also have things in your mind that you want to talk about. So let me just let you have a few minutes to do that. Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, Matondo, to you, Yaya Kabu, for giving me this opportunity to speak this morning. What I want to say to everyone is our story predates Egypt and it continues today. This is a very important time for us to be enlightened, to wake up and go back to our tradition. Nothing else has worked for us because we're not following the correct path. So give this path a try. This time is our time of promise. That time of promise was given to us when we were in Ethiopia, when we were in Egypt. And this time is the time we need to be working hard for that promise of full independence, spiritual independence, political independence we got, but without spiritual independence, it cannot work. Mm-hmm. This is our time for spiritual independence, and we're working for that to happen now. And it's been promised to us, but we can't get anything unless we work for it. And that's where we're at in BDK now. And if we listen and watch out for what's happening in Congo in the next year, it's a very critical time. They'll have elections next year, and then people will begin to see the manifestation of the promise. Mm-hmm. For those of us who are already in it, we know, we've seen, but now it's time for that fulfillment to come. And it's so important. There are so many things that I want to say and that I can say, but maybe another time.
Yeah, and you'll be here for a while, so we'll definitely have you back. And thank you so much for coming in. But we can't let you go without you saying some words in Kikongo and just talk Kikongo in this African space.
Oh,
yes.
Well, what I can say is, si tumo nana kuntwala.
What's that?
See you next time. And what I will say also is Salamuyenge. That's I'll live in peace.
Salamuyenge.
And you say to me, Wenda Muyenge, go in peace.
Wenda Muyenge. Wenda Muyenge. Thank you so much, my sister. Thank you so much. Appreciate your coming.
Matondo.
Thank you. All right, that was our sister Makaba. And she'll be here for a while. Hopefully we'll take her back. Quickly before you go, how can persons get in contact with you? Before you go, how can persons contact you?
Oh, I'll leave my details here.
All right.
Phone number and also email.
All right, so we'll have that here at the front desk.